Welcome to Flat Earth Debate, Uncut and After Show. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they premiere, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Also below this video you can get £50 for swapping your UK electricity supplier to Octopus Energy, and this is of particular note if you drive an electric vehicle. Speaking of Patreons, I'm going to do a quick shout out to all of you who do support me on Patreon, so a massive shout out of thanks and appreciation to Rob H, Ben White, Maximum Gravy, Austin Whitsitt, John Kays, Julian Jeremiah, Tommy Swagnett, Michael Kahn, Patrick Gunnels, Banter, Will Brax, Mel B Styles, Troy Shuker, Bose Nail, Samson, Maris, Hairy Blade, Mobile Max 777, Neo the One, Lost Cat FE, Rob W, Open Minded, Reese Pound, Del West Watson, Mike, Muted, Dick Earth Skeptic, Maria Neelands, Unbelievable Productions, Blue Ridge Ranger, The Real Gabster, Liam Nedrick Jr., Abraham Mohammed, Adrian Quintana, Skeptic936, Life is Short, theflatearthchannel.com, Texas Mike, and David Wayne Foster. So another massive thank you to all of you for supporting me on Patreon. Now I will hand over to whoever is in Discord and Google so you can enjoy their dulcet tones while I set up for today's live show.
Well, I just pointed out that, gravity is come after the belief that we lived on a sphere. And it become the Band-Aid for living on a sphere and how it was possible to live on a sphere. But even if you debunk everyone's understanding or misunderstandings about gravity, how does that prove what you're standing on?
It doesn't. As you say, if it's a Band-Aid after the fact, it's addressing issues with a pre-existing model that has issues. It's in no way a proof, or even in my opinion, it's not even a debunking. This might annoy some people who go after gravity, but as you say, it's not actually proving anything. So debunking it, what does that disprove? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I upset some people in Master B about that because I don't see arguing it at length when you don't live on a ball,
Yeah, I got that impression yesterday when Sleeping Warrior was doing his presentation after the fact. We both agreed on that, right? It's like, you just pummel this into oblivion before you even get into the rabbit hole of witch gravity. Like, yeah, you're going to need You're going to need to prove you're on a ball to worry about arguing and defending this Band-Aid, as you call it. Good word.
Exactly.
Because really, it's a very intricate fairy tale, and if you'll grant them R, they can explain anything almost. But you have to grant them that it's a sphere first, then they can make up any story that they want to tell after that.
Spot on. Same goes for axial rotation. The moment they assume they're on a sphere, they can apply an axis and give it a rotation value and ascribe it to actual occurring phenomenon in the sky. But in terms of their presupposition that you're on a sphere and that sphere is turning, you've got to prove that first, i.e. the sphere bit, before the sphere that's turning bit. So in many ways you get into the convoluted nonsense of Coriolis effect. I'm going to release a video on that, actually, the guy who came on looking for Bitcoin, the discussion we had with him about Coriolis effect. I've just finished editing it, which was an arduous task, I must admit. But that'll go out on Friday, 10 o'clock UK time. But it's just like you say, okay, we can debunk we spin. It is a fundamental premise of the heliocentric model, very useful. But once you've done that, assuming that you've got a spin and there's going to be no effect to observe, and talking away the effect that you're not going to notice and why you won't notice it, it's like whistling past the graveyard, explaining why we won't see the effect that's supposed to prove we spin. The effect that's supposed to prove we spin is Coriolis. If we don't see it, we haven't got it. We haven't got proof we spin. It is that simple.
Well, that's why the black swan is so devastating to them, correct? That knocks out everything. Bye-bye, everything.
Yeah, you're going to need
Yeah,
an R value.
every positive claim. Yeah, every positive claim they make is decimated by the black swan, pretty much.
Indeed.
There was a guy in chat on Quantum Erasers show yesterday. Guy, I think his name is Al Baruni. Stupid. Telling me where is Earth measured flat? Show me the measurements. QE was like, black swan.
Well, just send him to any geodetic surveyor, and they will explain to him that it is a tangent plane. But the black swan disproves the tangent, so all you're measuring is a plane.
Correct.
Then he put up some pictures of windmills, and I guess he's trying to say that they're going over a curve and disappearing.
Horizon's not Earth curve.
Exactly.
He's going to need R for that.
But that's why they ignore it, because they can't do anything without R.
Yeah, this is why none of us are losing any sleep over this, Neil. We're in the winning position.
Yeah, and that's what I was saying to him in chat. His excuse for not coming on was, what do you think his excuse was?
I didn't know you were suggesting he should come on.
Oh, yeah, he was talking a lot of trash. He said, well, why don't you come on? It's right in Discord. Just pop yourself on and explain your position. QE mutes me.
Was this on yesterday's QE show?
Yeah. QE mutes me.
Well, really, why would QE want some, religious zealot interrupting what's probably a good conversation at that point? And that's all they would do. They've almost outlived their usefulness.
I agree. Don't need them to explain both sides of the story. Accurately
but
Go on.
QE had a good point, because he said, if I mute them, I'll lose all my subscribers unless it's worthy of being muted. Nobody that comes, even on your show, Nathan, that has a valid argument is going to get muted. I mean, I've been here long enough to witness that. Even when I wasn't on the panel and listening to the show, I'd never seen anybody muted that it wasn't deserved.
Good morning.
Hey, Ted.
Well, that's...
All are welcomed, as I recall.
Well, I don't...
All are welcome if they want to. Do you want to... Who's causing the squealing? Is it you, 10th? You're on a squealy mic today.
No, I shouldn't be. I'm on now.
I don't know. There was some issue going on. Anyway, they're in no way obliged, right? Occasionally you guys will be like, oh, we're late for work, or this guy's not here, why isn't it? And I'm like, none of you are obliged in any way, shape, or form. The same exact principle applies to our opponent. None of them are obliged. The gateway, that would be the Discord server, the link that's published below every video live, is their opportunity to challenge anything they want if they want to. Now, further to that, I don't care about what they want further to that. In other words, if they want that, they can have that. That is to say, they can challenge us if they want to. As for the whole, well, you can come to me on this platform because it's more fair, more whatever they say it is, I couldn't care less about. Now, I run a show that is a debate, and if you want to challenge things, you can if you want to. I don't care what you want beyond that. But does that mean that I'm going to literally encourage them to come in and say, why don't you come in and put this to me? If I'm there and then chatting with them in the chat rooms, this happened with Blue Marble the other day. Shock horror, I was asking him for R. I think I got to 10 times, 10x, asking him for R with him running away. Well, I'm there and then. I'm chatting to him there and then. And he's saying to me, come and meet me at a different platform. I'm going, where's your R value? That's it. That's the sum total of the conversation repeated 10 times. Me asking him for his R value, there and then, there's the squeaky noise again. Who just opened their mic for a second?
Oh, that was me. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's all right. It's you causing the squeaky sounding then.
It's a sound Nazi. Who did that? Who's slurping?
It's the baby, I swear. He's squeaky.
I can challenge Blue Marble in that chat there and then. And all he can do is say, meet me somewhere else. That's it. It's like you're behind the bike shed, some kid's going, you're an idiot, and you go, okay, right. Now I'm going to beat the crap out of you. No, meet me at my playground with all my mates around me. No, I'm going to beat the crap out of you right now. No, come somewhere else at this time. Yeah, but I'm here now. I've dropped my bag, my fists are up. Let's go. No, I'm going to run away because I want to be surrounded by my own kind while this happens. It's like, okay.
That's a great analogy.
Most comical part of that is me telling them in the chats, this was Blue Marble, when he doesn't respond and can't give me an answer and is essentially shutting down mentally because he's not responding in chat. You know, the moment I say I've got to go because I had to share my show, so I disappeared from that chat, I think it was Bev's, and then shared my show and came back. The moment I disappeared after asking him 10 times for the R value and where he got it, the second I disappeared, I say I've got to go, bye-bye. I come back 5 minutes later and he's come back the second I've left going, cowards, run away. You're like, no, I'm here now. You had disappeared for a prolonged period while I asked you for R. Then I had to go. I've come back and you're calling me a coward for running away. Where'd you get R? And so it continues. Meet me at some other platform is how the response continues. It's like, no. I'm asking you now. So what I took that to is, are you muted? So for the 10 minutes before he basically called me a coward for running away as I had to go and temporarily, I admit, I came back to that stream, go and share my show. You know, he just shut down, disappeared. I'm like, are you muted? What's wrong? Why aren't you giving me an answer in this chat? Are you muted? Because the reality is nothing to do with the mute button, everything to do with him not being able to give me an answer. And there is no mute button in a chat feed. But there he is in someone else's chat, not my chat. I've got absolutely no control over what's going on. And yet he's telling me that he needs to meet me somewhere else. And how's he going to blame a mute button in a chat stream? He can't. That's what I'm asking him. Is this the mute button that you all cry about? The reason you're not giving me R? Because you're muted, right? Because he's not responding.
Is them being rendered speechless the same as a mute button to them? Like in their minds, do they think because they don't have a response that you've somehow hit a button in their brain that's not allowed them to speak?
Yeah, they think having their vocal cords along with the rest of their head removed from their shoulders is them being muted. Yeah, that's right.
Well, it's fairly simple. Show us R, and we'll come on your show. We'll come on your, just show us R. There won't be a Nathan Oakley show if you show us R.
That's what I was going to say. You run a daily debate. As far as to say, call you a coward, they're welcome anytime to come on. Why just stay in the chat? Come on the show.
That's what I'm getting at. That was the original point, Neil. Why encourage them? I was talking about this with my wife, and I was like, I'm quite happy with where I am in terms of what the show's doing, its growth, all the rest of the things to do with Flat Earth debate. And I'm still very pleased with the subject matter that I've picked to be a YouTuber with. Because it's got legs. It's got longevity. Now, the stress level is pretty much only the stress level of being a YouTuber, not of being a Flat Earther. That's long past. Now, we get updates from people who vanish from this scene, who are vehement, calling us idiots and telling us how Earth's a sphere. They disappear temporarily because the stress becomes too much for them. They can't cope with it anymore, and they're on their way to the nuthouse if they continue to challenge us. So they need a little break. Now, I've done this day in, day out for about 5 years. Is it causing me to have a mental breakdown? No. Does it cause me any stress? No, it actually provides me a living. I really love what I do. The joy of being a flat earther is sometimes a little overwhelming. It's fantastic. And the joy of actually having a YouTube channel that supports me, admittedly not because of the size of the channel, but because of the fantastic support I get from the people watching. Thank you very much for smashing the super chat and hitting the PayPal link and all those things. But anyway, my point is, it does actually sustain me. That's a fantastic feeling. So I get nothing but joy from this subject, which has longevity. They're never going to disprove the obvious and observable flat nature of the world, and the paradigm is going to be globe, as far as I'm concerned, till the day I die. So I'm always going to have a show. It's great. A little bit of stability. It's fantastic. Good.
Yeah, I thought that was an amazing choice of subject matter when I started to think about it as far as the setup of your show. But it kind of makes you like not want the globe to end too quickly, because if everybody realized tomorrow the Earth is flat, this show would kind of end.
No, exactly.
I
No.
disagree.
The title would just change. So when I started this, before Flat Earth, in fact, before I made that realisation, I watched a video by a guy who put a picture of Earthrise from the moon, complete fabrication of a picture, and described his emotional state based on the picture and how he felt insignificant and how humbling it was. It had 150, 250, whatever thousand views, because it was sat within the current paradigm. Well, if the paradigm changes and the globe dissolves tomorrow, whoever comes out on stage and they're a major significant player in this world stage that we have, and they say, yep, Earth's flat, NASA's being completely disbanded, I don't know how this happened, I just got here, man, what do you want? But it's flat. And then everyone accepts it on the spot. Unlikely, but let's just say for the sake of this discussion. Well, at that point, everything that is comparable to that guy describing Earthrise sits on our shoulders. Suddenly everyone's going to be doing all the same things that they've been doing now, which is asking us for answers. And because we're further into the subject, the chances are that that expectation might turn into actual research. Now, you can't conduct that research while you're being nothing but ridiculed for even challenging the current paradigm. So even if your research is fruitful, it won't be accepted. Now, if the contrasting view is true, i.e. people accept the observable nature of our flat reality, then that is valid and will be supported, possibly even funded. So there's nothing but advantageous things in my future if the paradigm does change. If it doesn't, I just don't have to change the title of my show.
Well, that's my point, though. It won't be a FED flat Earth debate anymore. It'd be like maybe FED flat Earth discovery or something like that.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like, so the channel as we know it would end.
No, it's going to be We Told You So.
Not the channel. The debate format wouldn't be a debate anymore because it was no longer under debate.
Exactly.
Because we're not on a globe. But the education status of the channel and this show would probably change very little other than the title. I said yesterday that 90% of what we do is education. Now, sometimes it's put in a format, if Alwyn's around playing Baldwin, of a discussion back and forth with the other side's position put forward. But to the most part, 9 times out of 10, anything discussed here is for the educational purposes of somebody understanding the nature of their reality, as opposed to a fundy challenging us. That's only 10% of the time. So if we lost that last 10%, because the world actually woke up to the reality that they're living in, then all that would happen is that we wouldn't get that last 10%. We probably would for a following 10 years afterwards, because there would be a certain faction of society that wouldn't want to accept it, and probably end up being Scientologists or something, because it's a heliocentric background, or backbone, or foundation, or however you want to describe Scientology. It's heliocentric by its nature. So those people would still come and challenge us. But it would be the metaphorical equivalent of how often concavers come and debate us. Not very often. Ergo, not worthy of the title, debate. But certainly discussion, Earth discussion. Wouldn't even need to drop the flat bit anymore, because everyone would know. So it'd just be Earth education, Earth discussion, whatever you like. Because suddenly all the things that are prevalent, perspective being one of them, that are removed from the description of the nature of your reality when you're on a sphere, suddenly have a lot more implications about how you observe the world, and they're currently suppressed, called flurspective. It's like, no, perspective's real, but because you've hijacked it and called it Earth curve, suddenly that isn't an aspect of your observations of your reality. Well, that would change, and people would want better explanations. The 6 hours spent with Life is Short would expand out into 6 million hours of people talking about how that works in reality. That's all that would change.
And then you'll have shows called Globe Earth Debate.
No, I think after the globe, this is a big if people stop believing that nonsense. We would be debating with people that would say, the flat earthers that have, I guess that would be the time to actually address things like the ether and other things like that. Is that what you're saying?
Maybe. I mean, maybe you're into debating the new gurus that come out that say, okay, we appreciate it's not flat, but here's my version of the world. And they come out with same sort of magic tricks, saying that what they're describing is science. If it was the ether, here's my science for the ether, and the same old magic trick gets punted. We might get into the wrangle-dangle of challenging the up-and-comers in terms of the gurus that have the new bullshit to try and or attempt to replace the paradigm. I wouldn't imagine that would happen though, because I think everything would be locked down and set in stone before that even happened. In other words, they'd have everything set in place for the control structure to work within a flat paradigm. So there'd be no opportunity for some other lone ranger to come along and offer their guru advice on what the world is. That had already been set with whatever they need in that model, a flat model. It'd still just be a reification of their model, though.
Yeah, when I figured out that reality wasn't a model, because that didn't come immediately with the understanding that with the black swan. Like it took probably it come a little bit quicker to me because I realized that all the flat Earth models that I'd been shown were faulty in some way, but I think that realization is the big one, the one that allows you to see what the Earth is.
There aren't any flat Earth models. They're all globe models. They're all globe projections. Anybody know of an actual flat Earth model that isn't a repurposed globe projection? I know.
Does anybody know of a globe model? I never seen a model.
No, they're all flat planar geometry with a presupposition of a tangent plane projected onto a sphere and then reprojected onto a flat grid system, distorted to all hell. So, no.
There's actually a guy in the Discord server that you run your show on. He has his own show where they're trying to create a flat Earth model, which I think is a little bit too soon. But I applaud the effort. But it just, we ain't got 1,000 years and trillions of dollars to spend on mapping the world. So I don't see it being successful with our resources.
No, you'd need some cooperation from the existing cartography, which is definitely in existence. Or short of that, an endless, infinite budget to do the cartography yourself. I think neither are likely. You're not going to get the information out of the liars, because I think Math Power Land got it right. Math Power Land would be a name of Matthew Boylan, but his stage name, if you want. Math Power Land is about exactly that: the math, the power, and the land. Well, if land is what it's all about, and that's where the majority of the deception lies, very specifically in terms of the nature of the layout of the land, it's being distorted into a sphere. So it is the essence of the deception. So once you appreciate that's the essence of the deception, why would they give you anything after the fact that doesn't achieve the same ends that they've produced the deception for in the first place? Now, I'm not going to divine their motivation about why they've deceived us, but it is to do with power and land. That goes without question. We're all in agreement on that particular score. But why would they then suddenly offer you up an actual, real working model when they've distorted it for a reason? That reason probably won't change, even though I don't know what it is. Therefore, you're just going to get the same old crap I hate to use the terminology, but the same piss in a different bucket.
Well, that's why I had that theory that, maybe heliocentrism is keeping the lunatics contained in the asylum. That's where that comes from.
Yeah, maybe beyond what we think is the already decided for us limitations at an ice wall, or us wrapping around ourselves and self-contained in a sky vacuum, never to find any other people or land or anything else beyond what we already know. In both of those paradigms, especially if we're trapped in a dome in this area that they give us on screen now underneath Flat Earth Debate, you've got that area. That's it. That's all we've got. It's like, well, no. When I try and explain that not necessarily infinite plane, the other end of the extreme, but just more. Well, if there is, then maybe there are more civilized people that just consider us uncouth and have said, look, right, either you keep yourselves under control and contained, or there'll be consequences. You just don't know. I mean, I'm completely spitballing. This is outside of the realms of our imagination, but we don't know the reason why we've had to have the land masses distorted in the way they have. But they have. There is definitely a deception. Not knowing why it is means that when the people have lied to you, you just can't trust the next thing they come out with.
Yeah, and well, also the some of the people that have propagated the lie don't even realize it's a lie. Like, when they say, "Oh, all the professors in college would have to be in on it." No, not necessarily. They've accepted something that's not true, and they've accepted it as truth, though. So for them to teach it, it's nothing to them. It's just a paycheck.
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Also below this video you can get £50 for swapping your UK electricity supplier to Octopus Energy, and this is of particular note if you drive an electric vehicle. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. One last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. Now we are joined by Neil, 10th Man, Sleeping Warrior, Refracted Curvature, the Adam Meakin, and a whole bunch of people in Discord, so welcome one and all.
Afternoon.
Hey, good morning.
Yeah, like you would know, Adam.
Like he would know what? I missed that while I was hustling people off mute.
An inside joke.
Okay, no in-jokes, please.
Didn't see no horse's head. I ain't scared of you.
Good pre-show. That was a very interesting discussion about the whys and wherefores of what might happen were the world to wake up to flat Earth tomorrow. Very interesting.
Agreed.
So check it out if you're watching this live. That'll come out tomorrow on Nathan Oakley channel, and it'll be whatever show number this is. I forget what number are we on? 15, 13, 15, 14?
15, 14.
15, 14, Uncut. So check out the pre-show. It's a very interesting discussion. Maybe it will continue after the housekeeping questions. We shall see how we get on. Any evidence?
Hang on, Nathan. Hang on.
Oh, okay.
The world wakes up to flat Earth every day because they can't show us our.
Yeah, that's correct. But I mean, in terms of the Western perception, the Western world perception that we're on a sphere, that current paradigm, the conversation started with me saying, I'll always have a show. And John was like, well, no, if the paradigm actually did change, then there wouldn't be a debate, therefore you wouldn't have a show. And I said, well, no, 90% of the time we're doing an educational stream anyway, discussing how and why Earth isn't a sphere is flat. Well, the isn't a sphere and the 10% of the time that is actually challenged disappeared. 80% of the show would remain exactly as it was anyway, but might expand into new realms of discovery about the actual nature of the world, including things like perspective, which are ridiculed because they're hijacked and called Earth curve. Well, that is actually the way we view the world, and that might become an education factor that we certainly would be involved in when it's applied to a flat reality. So, I don't think things would change that much, if I'm honest. It would just be the Life is Short presentation with, coincidentally, Ranty Flat Earth, who calls himself Flurfspective and now ridicules the very concepts detailed for about 6 hours on this very show, with one of my Patreons, which is Life is Short. So, that would be expanded out, and I said we'd end up with millions of hours of YouTube videos, people detailing how the world actually is perceived, which, like I say, is currently ridiculed.
Well, not only would you have a show, but much like those people who are brought up on stage front and center on TV shows and interviews, this guy or this woman or this book foretold of this, and it was the epic debate show that everyone, laughed at, and they're proven to be true. So you'd be heralded right up number one.
Maybe, maybe not. I mean, that is certainly not what I'm looking for. A successful YouTube channel would be nice. Please share the show.
Well, it wouldn't have to be anything you're looking for. It would be just what would happen if the research was done. Hey, did anyone believe it was flat prior to all of us finding out it was flat? And they do the research. It's just common sense what would happen.
Maybe.
Either that or the nut houses would be filled.
Yeah, but it'd be very gamma of me to sort of play out those self-indulgent fantasies. I'm the secret king
we're
that
not,
is going to be...
No one's saying you're doing it. I'm saying that if the world all of a sudden, it's just a natural consequence of, hey, how come no one told us this? Hey, over here in the low corner of the internet, we were telling you. That would naturally come up. We'd do it. Forget about you. We tell them.
Well, even then, we discussed Math Powerland in the pre-show. Well, hands up who watched a Math Powerland video in the last week?
Not on the last week.
That's sad, right?
To be honest, I've only ever watched one.
Let me get
I watched photo or painting last week.
You bastard, you're ruining my point. Okay, so one of us watched a Math Powerland video in the last week. Okay, this is the guy that brought this subject to the world in its modern incarnation. Well, we, who all appreciate this, we're saying, well, if everyone else was like us in the world and appreciated it, they'd come back to us and thank us. All right, like we all go back and thank Math Powerland? I think not.
Yeah, because he looks for it, though. He declares he's the one, whereas you don't.
But he is the one, isn't he? Like,
yeah, that was my point,
Yeah,
Neil.
but a
Exactly,
humble
John.
approach.
That was my point.
Well, that's when he will get his.
You've been doing it every day, haven't you? You've been doing back to back every day, and you've been, your presence has been more known for the. I mean, it's even.
Shout out to
even
Tommy.
Eddie. What's that guy across the pond has heard of you? Eddie Bravo or something. He goes on Joe Rogan's show. Even he mentioned like you're militant with it, and you've been so like accurate at defining the arguments as they unfold. And holding people to testimony to what they're saying and really dirting a lot of it out, whereas maybe someone else had give you the hint that the earth was flat or whatever. But I think your experience being on the plane for many years, you just you never looked for anyone else to tell you that. You decided you figured it out for yourself. I don't think you had looked at anyone else to convince you that the earth was flat. I think you just seen it yourself. So I think that's probably why you wouldn't hold precedent to hear anyone else.
That's not true. I possibly would have never contemplated if it wasn't for Math Powerland saying those words, saying Earth is flat. If he hadn't said those words, I might not be here. That's my point.
Oh, right, really?
Yeah, absolutely, without question.
That's...
I can't go beyond crediting Math Powerland for me finding this information out. If it wasn't for me, I don't know if it was on autoplay or what, but me going, what the hell is this guy talking about? And then listening for a few seconds, and then him detailing how Earth is flat, and me going, holy shit. And then going in and waking up my wife at 3 o'clock in the morning going, Earth's flat. Well, that was as a direct consequence of Math Powerland.
I guess, he's the person that just happens to wake you up to it. But I guess, that's just one of them things, isn't it? I mean, I don't think, fair enough, then you can thank him for being the word of mouth, but I guess someone had told him before as well.
Well,
Do you know what it was for me?
Do
you know what it was for me?
See, Matt Powerland may have formed the spirit, but this show has definitely sharpened it to a fine cutting edge.
Do you know what it was for me? It was Mark Sargent's clues, Flat Earth clues. When I don't know who it was that put them all into one big compilation, but when I watched that compilation of Mark Sargent's Flat Earth clues, it was kind of the way he presented it and the that tone that he's got, that endearing tone. And I just thought about some of the things he was saying, and I was like, hang on a second. And then the next thing is 3 months later, I realized that there was a live topic out there. Jeranism was actually live. And I was like, what? I thought it was a historical position. I didn't realize it was current.
See,
too.
Anthony, by you saying that, that was for you. Then for me, it was Antarctica Pictures. And for somebody else, it was Sleeping Warrior and his channel. So everyone's going to have their first memory of whatever, right? So
mine was like, I come onto the internet and I used to watch.
I'm in the middle of talking, Tommy.
I used to watch his videos about that
Tommy,
creationist, and he used to take the mick out that guy.
Talking, Tommy.
And I used to become an atheist watching them videos. I thought he had a point, and eventually, you know, I then become like a strong atheist. I watched all the debates about that, and I come across flat Earth, and I was like, oh, flat Earth. This, I know the Earth's a globe, like. This is ridiculous. Do you know what I mean? And I saw the people like debating and stuff. I thought, oh. So I started debating it, and then someone referred me to it and says, "Oh, why don't you go on Nathan Oakley and talk about it?" And I goes, "All right, cool." So I went on there, and then that all happened there. And then fucking 5 years later, I eventually thought, you know what, you guys have got a point. And I think, like someone else said, your testimony to how much work you've done by arguing these things publicly and driving it forward every day. You know, has set you head and shoulders above anyone else that's done, because you seem to be doing the most for it.
I agree, Tommy.
Well, now I know Tommy's fighting style. Relentless. Just go.
Okay, do you want to finish off your point, 10th? Go ahead.
Sorry,
Thank you, Tommy. It's okay. Thank you anyway. I appreciate all the compliments, Tommy. Go ahead, 10th.
No, I'm just saying, here we are in the present talking about what might happen in the future if it ever should happen, but we got the past to learn from. And what did we learn from the past when something's been going on for a while and everyone's been denying it, and then the person who started it and maybe a few stragglers after that carried that message because that person died off 100 or so years later. Oh my gosh, we've all been like, oh my gosh, you know what? This guy said this 100 years ago, and then only a few people picked up on it, and there was one book written. So they all go and say, do a little research to see if anybody else had talked about this new finding, which they do, and then they start giving credit out. So credit will go out to Quantum Eraser, credit will go out to your channel, credit will go out to Sleeping Warrior, credit will go out to everybody who, while under fire, when everyone was in the globe paradigm, had enough fortitude to keep the message going. That's what's going to happen if it ever happens.
I don't know if I believe that.
I don't know if it requires fortitude. Again, in the pre-show, we were discussing how this isn't stressful. You know, I don't see it as like,
no, not for you.
Got the stamina.
Not for you. No, Nathan. Again, you can tear this apart in little sections, and you'd have a point. I'm talking about people aren't talking to me about flat Earth. Don't even want to bring the subject up. I'm talking about daily conversations that people have to still stay with their understanding of what the nature of the Earth is, while relatives and friends around them, even though they get together for other things, it's not hatred or anything, but there's just an elephant in the room. No one wants to talk about it because you had your talk already and it didn't go good for them, or they think it didn't go good for you, but they're the ones who are quiet. You're not quiet. You still want to have that talk with your friends, but they shut the whole conversation down because it's too stressful for them.
Yeah, that was going to be my point. When you say you've had the fortitude,
that was my point.
I see the fighting the opposition point after you've fallen down the hill. In other words, the example you're giving is somebody who's essentially fallen down the hill. Well, after that point, it requires great fortitude to retain a globe argument.
Well, like I said, you can look at it from that perspective, but how about the one on top of the hill who's looking at his friend down the hill and saying, hey, come on up here so we can talk. No, it hurts too much.
If you're on top of the hill, you just think they went behind the horizon.
Horizon's not Earth, Kev.
Boom, boom.
Right. Yeah, but that's what they believe. If you're on top of the hill, you ain't paying attention.
They're doing a John Cena. They're standing there saying, "You can't see me. Curvature's blocked me. You can't see me." When you can see them, but they're acting like they're hidden behind curvature. They're hiding behind the curve. That's where they are. The imaginary curve.
You got something when people say to you, "Look, talk to me about anything, but don't send me any more stuff about this."
Yeah. Well, they're trying to hang on to the fence at the top of the hill. They don't want to roll down. And if they can, at that point, stop you giving them any more ideas about it. But I think at that point, the seed's already planted. It's already too late. They're already tumbling. They think they're holding onto the fence. And even if they are at the top of the hill holding onto the fence, eventually they'll lose their grip and roll down. When they start to actually contemplate something that they've told you to not talk about, well, that stays in their mind. They can't get rid of it. You can't unscramble scrambled eggs. Shout out to that flat fellow for the super chat. Really appreciate your support. Thank you very much indeed.
No, and that's precisely what, that was perfect what you said there, because that's why you should talk about it and then leave it for their conscience and God to sort it out later if they're going to fight it now.
Really interesting subject, though. That was my main, when I brought it up, that was the initial thing, is this is an awesome subject.
Well, yesterday's show was one of the best shows ever. It was so much education coming through the airwaves, so to speak. I mean, Sleeping Warrior did a great presentation. Adam came on, and then the subjects covered. I mean, it was wonderful yesterday. And there was no Glober there to distract or to... I mean, the show will go on no matter what, because as we know, it's an educational channel, and you learn more here than you do in the schools.
When John just said then that it's a really interesting topic, he's so right. But I feel personally, I don't know about you guys, but I feel like robbed that when I was like 13, 12, 10, the age of learning in school, I feel robbed that I didn't get the opportunity that I'm having now as an adult to ask these questions back then to a teacher and ask them, how do we have gas pressure without a container? Because can you imagine if Conspiracy Cats really was your teacher and you were the age of 12 or 10 and you're putting him in the corner as a student and you're saying you can't do that, sir, that's a violation of the second law of thermodynamics. And he's going to go, that's not in the national curriculum. How can you be arguing the second law of thermodynamics? And obviously that's just going to make society start to question what's going on with the education system, such to the extent that you're going to be like putting the teacher in the corner and battering him. It's like, metaphorically, of course. But that, I feel as though I was deprived of that when I was younger. And I feel angry that I'm only learning that at late 30s, early 40s. It's an outrage, in my opinion.
Well, you were, Anthony.
My teaching to flat Earth was very brief. It was like, they used to think the Earth was flat, and then basically, Christopher Columbus went over the hill and he saw the boats being over the horizon, and he said the world was round. So he went across the ocean and proved it. And that's the story I got taught in school. And there was no like, the Egyptians thought it was flat, or all the other sort of cosmologists thought it was flat. It wasn't none of that backstory was ever taught to me. It was just a very straight black and white picture. Everyone thought the Earth was flat, and then everyone thought it could fall off the edge. And then Christopher Columbus was courageous and went out and actually discovered that you can go around it, and that's how we know the Earth's round. So that's kind of I kind of went with that, like most people did, and most people do, and never really give it a second thought. But I'd love to have learnt about how all the Egyptians looked at things, and when learning about zodiacs and learning about when someone's born and stuff like that, I do see common characteristics. There's some sort of mystique about it, but we've been taught not to really think about the spiritual world. Do you know what I mean? And a lot of people do feel spiritual naturally, even though they don't follow any religion, but they're just naturally spiritual because there's something that's like that we can't put our finger on, and that's because a lot of it's been we've been told that we just come out of existence, expanded into everything today because gravity pulled things together, and therefore no God did it. It's just gravity and reactions of chemicals over millions and millions of years, of ingredients of a cake will always be ingredients of a cake. You need someone to put that together and mix it up to make the cake and to bake it and put it in certain conditions to make it what it is. Otherwise, you just got ingredients. And ingredients adding billions of years don't do nothing to it. Because remember, only one pair of hands at work is more useful than prayer will ever do. So get to work.
Anyway, what I was going to say, the Sleeping Warrior is that
before you do, functional sequence specified complexity is what you're talking about.
Nathan, you're quite quiet. I don't know if it's just me, but you seem like you're a 5 compared to your normal 9.
Oh, yeah.
In me?
No, yeah, obviously, Tommy, you.
No, I'm not going to adjust. What I'm not going to do is adjust my volume again and end up arguing for 5 minutes.
You're leaning back. Right. Inverse square law.
Tommy thinks that I was talking to him when I started it off with Nathan.
Sorry, mate.
Just the inverse square law. If I sit up normally, as I do for my intro, this is where I'm sat, right? Nice and clear. However, if I sit back, I'm now twice as far away from the mic. Inverse square law.
Okay. He still seems quiet though.
Okay, look, I'm fine.
It
Sound great.
can dead us as well.
We got two sound Nazis now. Anyway,
I'm quiet when I'm quiet. This is me talking at a relatively low volume, right? But I've got to have enough dynamic range so that if I start shouting at you, Anthony, it doesn't distort. That's all it is.
Can you all stop over talking Tommy, please?
The other thing I've learned is that when something like that happens, when everyone laughs at the same time from 3 lines, that obviously increases the overall energy that goes into OBS and the overall line at the end of the mix chain, which increases the overall output and can push things into distortion. So I've got to have quite a lot of dynamic headroom, far more than I ever anticipated, because there's a lot of people that potentially could be all talking, creating energy all at the same time. Anyway, don't worry about my dynamics, Anthony. It's not your worry.
Go ahead, Ted.
Thank you. Adam, that was a great line. So anyway, Sleeping Warrior, you are getting revenge, because what you just said is what we all went through, where we asked the teacher something, and then, of course, we get shut down. But now you're much older, much wiser, and now you realize the game that was played on kids who are naturally curious. And just this show and just what happened now should be how a classroom setting should be, where everyone gets to ask questions. Their curiosity is met and answered, or maybe no one knows and it's still a search. But the whole point is that's what happens on the show. So, when it comes to math, Adam's the guy, because I don't understand a bit of math the way he does. And so we always go to Adam for math, right? And so everyone's got their strength. Yours is gravity. So imagine a classroom setting where it was allowed for tough questions, but you couldn't get shut down. And everyone would explore it. Everyone would find out either there is no answer yet, there might be an answer in the future, or this is what it is. And that's what we're experiencing here on this show. That's the attraction of the show. It's not the dumb ballers who come here with their idiotic claims. And after they get refuted, they still keep their idiotic claims. That's just funny. It's just funny to see that and sad at the same time.
Well, you want to hear something funny? My son is 9. He's in 4th grade. And I guess he pays attention a lot more than I think, and he's heard me discussing this topic. And I had a parent-teacher conference a couple of weeks ago where I come in, and she was they addressed that he was a flat earther, and she was like, I don't know what to say to him. I don't know, and I was like, then just admit that. I'm not going to tell him that it's not.
Interesting that she felt obligated to say something in the first place. I mean, if somebody came in with some kind of, let's just say, I'll use the phrase that they would use, some kind of radical, far-out theory of something, I just probably wouldn't want to speak to them. But I wouldn't go around and say, oh my God, I don't know what to say to that guy. I'd just take the quiet pill and just sit there quietly and just listen.
Hold on.
Laugh about it later on if that was what I wanted to do.
This is a religious belief. Heliocentrism is a religious belief. It is comparatively akin in a Church of England school for a Muslim to come in and the Muslim to start detailing things that are against the general teachings of a Church of England school, and the teacher to say, I don't know what to say to him. He's a Muslim. Exactly. I don't know what to say to him.
I prefer to use the football analogy because it's a lot easier to relate to, because like the religion thing, it's so personal to so many people. But if you have, like, say, for instance, a Chelsea fan and he walks into a Man United camp and he starts preaching the blue word, he's going to get bricks thrown at him pretty quick, right? It's the same thing in this topic.
Well, Anthony, I think what you did with those 2 students in a live interview on the streets is epic. It's still one of the best shows I've ever seen that you've ever put out, because here you are talking to two young people who are in the system of education in the universities, and you are just way over. They have never encountered anyone like you. And I mean, it was awesome. So kudos for that. That's what's happening here.
Well, see, the only reason I bring it up is my 9-year-old child, just from listening to bits and pieces of, when he's been out of school, of hearing me talk and listening to the things that I listen to, well, it is able to explain why it's flat. He can go into detail about a tangent plane and the measurements involved, and the teacher don't know what to do with that. Hell, I don't even know what to do with that. My kid's smarter than me.
When you tell kids that triangulation requires 3 straight lines and emphasize the straight, and the minute they start talking about GPS triangulation, that is once someone says that to you and you think about it from the different perspective that you don't get taught, all of a sudden it makes perfect sense. And that's that intuitiveness that children spot very easily. Most adults can't even see it. Look at like the likes of Dawn Treader, for example, or a Kumo virus. No matter how obvious and intuitive it is and slaps him in the face with violence, he's still going to reject it because he doesn't want to believe that it might, or he doesn't want to accept that it might actually be true. He will always ignore it. And that's what children don't do. They realize the intuitiveness of facts like that, and they go, "Oh yeah, I hadn't thought of it from that perspective." But that's what the beauty of that. That's why. What's his name said? Socrates said that, "Give me a child," or it might have been Aristotle. "Give me a child to the age of 7, and I'll give you the adult." That's because when they've not had that pollution of the system in the mind, that it's that bareness, that I don't know what the right word is, but the pureness to it, that mind, until it gets in the system. Once it's in the system, it's messed up.
You're talking about programming. They're not programmed, and all of us were that way, and some of us are still that way, and we fought it all the time. And so we knew something was up. We just didn't know what was up. But now we know what's up. But that's why kids are great, because I got my grandchild here with me, another one from last week, and just it's intuitive, like you said, about everything. Sees me on the tractor and starts asking questions, and it's just an adult would never talk that way, and because they're still curious, they're not programmed.
Quick shout out to Godzilla37, who says there is only one thing the globe model can't stand up to, and that is scrutiny. Thank you very much.
By the way, I've just thought of something massive, right? There was a Sky Television technician dealing with next door but one neighbour's house yesterday, and I was talking to him, walking the dog, the dog that's not dead. And I was talking to him, and I says to him, "Hey, listen, they need a line of sight, don't they?" And he said, yeah. I said, "How do you know what it is that you're looking at is actually a satellite?" And he was like, "As opposed to what?" I said, "Well, bus or a tree or any other inanimate object or even a reflection of a signal." I said, "How do you know that it's actually that?" And he starts going into it, and I says, and basically the point of what I'm getting to is that he pulled out this little device, and it gave him an approximation of where the satellite, in quotes, was on the horizon or just above the horizon, right? And I says to him, "How accurate do you need to be with your signal when you're aiming your satellite dish?" I said, "How accurate do you need to be?" He said, "Very." I said, "How much?" I said, "Is it like fractions of a millionth of a centimeter or what?" And he said, if you have a windy day and it moves your dish, you will lose signal, and you're moving your dish a couple of millimeters. You'll lose the signal because you're not getting it you're not close enough to the thing. And then I started thinking about the effects of refraction, and obviously how much it varies on their model. It continuously varies, up and down, and Rumpus will tell you that it's only fractions of a degree, but over that distance, that's a huge amount of movements that isn't possible if you're receiving a satellite signal from a satellite dish or a satellite thing in space. That's incredibly precise. It needs to be locked onto it with a precision that a wind can move it off. And I thought, if you think of how much movement a wind can create on a satellite dish, and how much refraction that they claim that their model's doing, bearing in mind that the signal is coming down from a height into a more dense medium, and it's continuously curving at a magical, wonderful rate that fluctuates massively to make it look flat at times. Satellite TV would never work if what they're telling us with respect to light and refraction was as variable as it was, because it would be continuously missing the house, because it's always varying around it but never really hitting it. It's just nonsense.
Hey, Anthony, I've got a regular old antenna on a 15-foot pole, galvanized pole in the backyard, aimed, and you can get this app that tells you where the towers are for that kind of signal, if you're going to use in that old-fashioned, rabbit ear type of thing. And so this is an HD antenna. So I aimed it there, and I positioned it in place, came in, hit the search thing on the TV. It's searching for these antenna TV signals. It finds them. Getting free HD TV just off the rabbit ears outside. And so one day it was really windy, and I went to it, and it was not there. I go, wait a minute, what happened? I look at the antenna, and the wind had shifted it. So I went there, and I turned it back to its original spot, which I marked with a marker. And then voila, it worked. So you got a point.
Yeah, satellite television could not work if refraction of light was bending light that much that it was continuously varying. It would always miss the house. Sometimes it would pass through it. Rarely would it stop on it, but it would be continuously varying. And it's like, this is nonsense.
Well, let me clarify. Refraction of light is not nonsense. Refraction at the rate of 7/6R is nonsense.
Apologies, that is what I meant. 7/6R, yeah. Continuously variable 7/6. That makes it look flat all the time. Yeah, that's nonsense.
Well, that's great. 30 minutes into the show. We haven't asked a housekeeping question. Who says the show's going away?
Well, let's get on with it then.
No, I'm not complaining. This is great.
Well, I did have a question as Tony's here. If the world did change and accept it as flat, Tony's going to have to come up with new housekeeping questions, unfortunately.
Well, there wouldn't be any housekeeping questions necessary then, would there be?
Well, that was my point. What would they be?
Any evidence of where Rumpus is? Any evidence of Brendan? They're
Any
all
evidence
in the
of super
house.
chats for all these ballers that get paid to lie to people with the convenient lie?
Hold
Any
on.
evidence of
Hold
those
on.
super chats anyway?
Who gets paid for what? Oh, you're talking about the YouTubers. Fair enough.
Yeah, like the flat Earth gets paid literally super chats for people to tell for him to tell them the convenient lie that they want to hear.
That's
There
what they
is
say
a
about
market
us.
for that.
That's what they say about us. They say over on these crazy conspiratard flat Earth channels, they get paid. People give them money to lie about Earth being flat.
No way. They say that about us.
Yeah.
Funny thing is, we can identify and particularize exactly the lies that they preach. Yet when it comes down to it, they can't do anything to point out any lies. All right, we might make a mistake periodically. We all do. We're all human. And when we do, we go, oh, fuck, bollocks. Yeah, okay. Or we just ignore it and then hope it goes away. But we can point out hundreds of lies on their side. The biggest one for me is obviously gravity. It's not a force. And obviously Newton's first law of motion on their model requires that you have a force to have acceleration. Well, if gravity is not a force, then what's accelerating these matter? Oh, well, and then they start calculating it using Newton's second law. And before you know it, they've got a force again. Nah, but that's the lie.
Well, they're saying ours is lies because it doesn't line up with the education system.
Yeah, maybe it's because the education system's telling children a one-sided view that is polluting their mind, and that's the reason why it doesn't line up with it, because we're saying, hang on a second, this is nonsense.
Well, imagine a child, since John shared his story of a 9-year-old, imagine even his son, his child or somebody else is saying, well, teacher, you're going to need R for that. And then they're stuck even more. I mean, this is where this is going. Kids in school are going to say you're going to need R for that.
That'd be nice. Slow motion or slow-mo moon buggy says, thanks. Okay. Well, thank you for the super chat. Really appreciate it.
That's what my son did. He pretty much demanded that the teacher give him the measured radius value and the method for it before she could continue talking about how it's a sphere.
How old is your son?
He's 9.
Oh, get him.
Is he with you or against you, or is he just testing it for shits and giggles?
No, I guess he's because I tried to throw him off. I told him, I said, only idiots believe the Earth is flat. To test him. And he was like, well, I don't believe it, Dad. I know it. I was like, well, what the fuck am I supposed to do with that? I'm sorry for cussing. Apologize.
You'll have to be careful, though. He'll get kicked out of school for being a disruptive influence if he carries on attacking the teacher like that, because they can't have truth seeds coming out in the classroom.
Yeah,
Well, that's
again,
what I was trying to explain to him, is just to be quiet.
Yeah, again, this is the same comparison. So the Muslim child comes home and says, I spoke about Allah, and the teacher says, I don't know what to do with you. And the parent says to the Muslim child, just don't talk about the very nature of what makes you you. Just don't talk about it. You might get in trouble. Well, yeah. Why? Well, because the current paradigm is a heliocentric paradigm. So you better not talk about the obvious and point out that they're just assuming something that can't be measured when they detail their religion, because that might get you in trouble. You know, you've just got to put your head down, listen to them babble on incessantly about something that they can't prove that's being taught to you in a school. And when you say you can't prove it and they tell you they can't cope with that, you know, just hope it doesn't get you a detention.
You're right. I'm going to change what I said to him. But if he wants to challenge it, that's his right. I kind of feel bad about it.
No,
now.
it isn't. Not in a comprehensive school. Incorrect. That's not what he's there for. You want him to challenge stuff, stick him in a private school. You want him to comprehend stuff, stick him in a comprehensive school. If he's not comprehending what they're telling him, then he's failing. That's the bottom line in a comprehensive school.
No, he is comprehending. He is comprehending it. He's just not believing it.
He doesn't need to believe it. He needs to be able to repeat it.
Comprehending it. Yep.
He needs to comprehend and repeat. That's it.
Well, he can do that. He can answer the questions right.
Perfect. That's
but
all he
when
needs.
she's talking about it, yeah. But when she's talking about it, he just asks questions that she can't answer, and she's like, it's making her look bad in front of the class.
Well, that's a testament to what will be happening in schools all over the place. You know, your kid is by Nielsen ratings. Oh God. Go on, whoever it is that's decided to.
No, that was me. I'm sorry. You want to finish or I'll go?
In comparative terms to Nielsen ratings, your kid represents 25,000 of the kids. So you've got a comparison where he doesn't just represent himself. There's a lot of other kids that are going to be doing the exact same thing. You're not the first parent that's told me this. It's not the first account I've read about it on Facebook that my wife shoved under my nose either. This is not uncommon. But that's a big problem for the give up.
Is that true? That's not uncommon? I mean, is that really true? It's not.
Yeah,
uncommon?
that's true. I've heard plenty of accounts of people telling me about how they have had kids that are essentially, depending on which side of the argument they're telling me it from, disrupting the class because they're a flat earther and asking questions that can't be answered, and the teacher can't cope with it. Almost pretty much identical to what you're saying. You're not the first account I've heard. Far from it.
No.
Okay, so what I was going to say is that's what happened to me when I was in school, when I was challenging my teacher who said, look, he doesn't even believe, he says, I don't even believe it, but I got to teach it. And so I was less knowledgeable then, but I had the obvious knowledge of, hey, that can't be true because of this. It was so limited to what I know now. So where I said, look, I'll answer the questions on the test, but I don't accept it as true. He says, that's okay. I'll pass you. Just answer the questions. And
Exactly.
we know you don't believe it.
Exactly.
He says, we know you don't believe it.
That's exactly what I'm saying. You don't need to believe what's being taught to you. So I remember getting kicked out of a religious education lesson in the first year of secondary school because I challenged some of the stuff that was being taught based on other lessons I'd had literally the same day. There was conflicting information, and I was kicked out of the class. But I learned a difficult lesson, which is to say that if you're being taught it, you're not expected to believe what's being laid down. You're just expected to be able to parrot it back. If you can do that, you'll pass and show that you can learn and comprehend, so that it can put you into a work setting, and you're not going to question the validity or the morality of what you're doing. You just do it, go home at the end of it. That's it. Can you do this process? Listen to what I'm telling you to do, repeat what I've told you to do, then go out and do what I've told you to do, having listened and repeated it. If you can do that, you'll do well as a worker bee. And that's what you need to be if you're coming out at the end of a comprehensive education structure. Can you listen, comprehend, and then function with the information that's been given to you? If you go into a work setting and you say, I question the morality of using this particular chemical in this process where we produce this item. Just turn the machine on and press that button. No. The chemical property in this particular chemical is going to cause all sorts of problems for the end user 30 years down the line, and it's definitely not biodegradable. You're fired. Get out. You're just supposed to be turning the machine on. Do you see where I'm going?
I remember when I asked my history teacher, I don't remember exactly what it was now, but it was something to do with the beginnings of World War II. And I remember she said something, and I said, how do they know that? And her answer back to me was, she said, I don't know, I'm just telling you what to learn, what you need to know. And that was one of the things that made me question, like, well, if she doesn't know how they know that, I can't remember what the issue was now, but it was something to do with World War II and Hitler and something along them lines. It doesn't matter. Point was, her answer was, I don't know. I'm just telling you what I've got to tell you for the purposes of like the syllabus and the teaching you stuff. And I just realized that if she doesn't understand this and she's just spitting it to me, how am I supposed to understand that? And there is no way that you can understand something if the teacher doesn't understand it herself.
Nathan, well, how are things? Hey, everyone.
Hello, Brian.
What advice were you giving John there about his lad at school?
That he needs
I was listening to the show.
Okay, my advice would be that you don't necessarily need to believe what's being taught to you. You need to be able to comprehend what has been taught to you and parrot it off verbatim on a piece of paper at the end of the term, or whatever you guys call it, semester or whatever. At the end of that process, you need to be able to repeat what has been told to you. It is not a necessity for you to believe it.
Exactly. The purpose of you being there, the purpose of your children going there, is to go and get credits, certificates for society for them to function in the system. That's its purpose. The comprehensive thing is to see how good a worker bee you are. The purpose of your kid isn't to go there, and then your kid isn't going to bring down the system, change the system. They're just going to piss the teachers off and get worse marks. So my boys have just finished. One of them's just finished his exams, and he was taught to repeat, because that's the purpose of the mark. That's what you're going to get, how well you repeat. Outside of him getting that particular certificate, I'll support his critical thinking, and he has plenty, particularly political. You get on with him, 10th. Yeah, but that's not for him to be doing at school, because it will not benefit him at all. So the way we took it was go to the certificate school, get the certificates on what you need to move forwards, and keep your opinions and use them in your own life. But you don't have to thrust them down the throat of some poor, as Tony said, some poor little sap who, frankly, when you do push it, goes, I don't know. I'm just told I have to teach it you.
Yeah, certainly not the case in a private school setting. So I was privileged enough to have a private education at a certain point in my life, and that is not how they do things. Now, at the time, I was too young to appreciate that was the case. But when that school shut down, I had to go into a normal high school setting and realise very quickly how different things are. What they are preparing you for in a comprehensive education. You know, and I very quickly realised how much easier it was, how much less brain power was required to not question things. When you were taught about logic, you were expected to question what you were being taught. It was a very different type of education. As soon as you go into a comprehensive education, I thought, this is much easier. You mean to say that you just tell me what's on the blackboard, and if I can just literally repeat it word for word, I'll pass? Well, that's easy. Yeah, I can do that with my eyes closed. I don't even need to be here. Just give me the homework at the end, and I won't do it. I'll read it, and then when it comes to the test, I'll parrot it back on the test. No homework required, no need to be in the lesson. I'll wag off, go and do all the naughty things that teenagers do, spend very little time in the actual school, and pass all the tests easily, because it's not required of anything other than being able to repeat what they've told you. So long as you listen the first time and can literally say it back word for word, you'll be okay. No thought required.
Yeah.
Okay, can I throw a scenario out there? Sorry, Anthony, just very quickly. That's because the only reason I'm cutting in on you, Anthony, is that's why I asked the question when I first came in. Otherwise, I wouldn't cut in on you. What about this scenario, though? When you have 90% of a classroom in time to come, of the kids in the classroom, who don't believe in the globe, but they're all just going along with the nonsense they're being taught. Because that is on the way.
Okay, let me answer.
So do they, hang on, one second. Do they all keep pretending even though they're in the absolute majority?
Yes, they must, or they'll fail. The purpose isn't to get them to question their reality, their expansion of their mind, or their inquisitive nature. None of that is the purpose. Their purpose is, like when I exampled, the guy who goes in, who's just got a job operating a press that presses out Barbie dolls. Yeah? And that's what the guy goes into the classroom at the beginning of his workday for the first time, and they say, this is how the machine operates. Here's the safety aspects. Are you paying attention? Yes, I am. Great. So now you won't kill yourself or destroy the machine. Press this button when this thing comes under that press. Do you understand? Yes. Okay. Any questions? Yes. What about the chemical? What about the biodegradable nature of it? The guy who's running the health and safety course doesn't care, and suddenly that question is costing that company money. Because he's not walking out the door, having listened once, comprehended, not going to kill himself or destroy the machine, walk down the stairs to the machine, start using it. He's asking questions about the chemical, not his concern, right? Little worker bee, you don't concern yourself with the chemical composition of Barbie. You press Barbie. That's your job here. Don't waste my time. Get on with it. Now, if the same scenario was that that person was in the school because he was in the majority of flat earthers, questioning the globe bit, then you're going to fail, because when you go into the workplace, you're going to be you're going to be doing the same thing, questioning the chemical like you've questioned the globe. You weren't here to learn about whether or not it was real. You were learning how to repeat. That's all you were really learning, how to repeat. Not the validity of what you were repeating, just can you repeat it or not? If you can't, then you fail. That's what you get from comprehensive education, and if you can't do that, great, teach your kids to understand what's happening. You're being taught how to comprehend and repeat. But what they're telling me is wrong. Okay. That doesn't matter. That's irrelevant. Can you repeat it? Because if you need a job at the end of it, that's what you're going to need to be able to do.
Well, that's what I explained to my son, was that he needed to be able to give the right answer, and that he wasn't allowed to have an opinion until he knew the subject that he was discussing completely. But I think he knows it better than I do at this point.
Doesn't matter either.
Well,
no. Stop.
My point.
No, stop. Got to correct that too. Same scenario. So the guy who goes to get a job on the press is a chemist wizard. He knows everything about those chemicals. Far more than the guy at Mattel that's developed that Barbie doll. So because he's now in a position to know better, he should be operating above his status when he's there to press Barbie. Again, no, that's a fail for the company.
Yeah, but he wouldn't be working at the press if he was that smart, right?
Maybe one day he'll be able to work that press really well because he listened and comprehended, and he'll be recognised as a good worker, and he might make his way from blue collar to white collar with 10 years worth of work and no university degree under his belt, because that is the standards that are laid out and the path that is before him if he's a blue collar worker that's got to press a button, and he needs to comprehend how he's not going to kill himself or break the machine, not how the chemical works, even if he does. So all you people in the education system thinking that you need to tell the teacher how the earth's flat, no you don't. Your parents have stuck you in a comprehensive setting where you need to learn how to comprehend. So just comprehend, repeat, and then get out at the end of it and hope you get a blue-collar job.
All right, enough for this crap. I heard enough.
Hang on, Neil. Hang on.
They're going to challenge it, though, Nathan.
Neil, hang on. Neil, I'm going somewhere with my points. Please, leave me go where I'm going, please. You won't be unhappy, right? Nathan, we will always have that chemical that we shouldn't have put into the Barbie dolls in the Mattel factory if we always allow kids to tell kids to just ignore and just learn about stuff that isn't real in school. That chemical will always be there as long as those kids always pretend from day one. So that doesn't work.
Yeah, it does.
That's not going to change anything.
Yeah, correct. That's it. Perfect. That won't change things. Yeah, you don't want your press operators to change chemical formulas, Brian. You don't want them to be changing things.
But it's not about but you're missing the point. It's not about the operator of the machine. It's about it's starting at children level in school where they're not accepting that they're being taught something. They're not accepting rubbish. It's like, as I said, if 90% of the class is pretending that it's a globe when they all don't believe any of it, I mean, then that chemical will always be being put into that solution for it to make those things. That chemical will never stop being put in there if those kids keep pretending that they're just going along with it. The whole point of this is to not be going along with it. To change
for us,
stuff.
I'm speaking from the perspective of the control structure. I know you're debating against me and we're aware of what's going on here. But yeah, everything that you're saying is a negative. As a devil's advocate for the control structure, I take as a positive. You mean they're not going to try and alter things? That's perfect. That's wonderful. Excellent.
Well, that's the last thing I'd have to say on it. I'll leave
Yeah,
everyone. Oh, Adam,
and I
please.
agree. Let me just agree with Brian. And I agree. I don't take this stand. I'm just playing devil's advocate. I'm just saying how it is. And everything I'm detailing, I stand in vehement opposition to, Brian. Likewise, you do too. But that is how it is.
The way to fix this, for me, isn't what's being discussed, which is to have the workers, the children, be the militant ones. There's a similar parallel that's going off right now, and it's parent power that does these things. So those that have been through the system that stand up against the system, and currently in the States and in the UK, parents are standing up against critical race theory being taught to their children. Yeah, the kids have had to sit there and go through it, just like they will always have to. But the way for change isn't to have militant workers. You have to change at the management level, and in this case, the management is us, the parents. And I think, like I said, there's a good example going off. If there's enough groundswell of support that what you're teaching my children is wrong, then people won't tolerate that. But it requires that groundswell before any change occurs. Hence, why CRT was
Structurally dealt with already.
That's a generational thing.
Hold on. That's structurally dealt with. Hold on. Adam, when you got to university, which is what you would require to ascertain a position in management, that would be white-collar work, you'd need your degree to get to that lofty position. Well, when you get to the university, they explain how that system works. Here's what we taught you originally, because we need you to comprehend it. Now we're going to teach you how it really is. It's very different. Now, they don't tell you why. Presumably, they've given you a completely different education. As a good example, because we cover it on the show, gravity. They'll tell you it one way up until A level, then they'll tell you a different way completely at university level. But that is the certification that they require in this work structure that we're detailing on this live show that takes you to the white-collar status. But then you understand something more than the blue-collar do, don't you, Anthony? Don't you, Adam?
Well, then you're superior.
Correct.
You look down on them.
Correct.
That's what I'm saying. And these are all within the system. These are all, everything's still within the control. So you like I say, you go up there, you're better than them, and therefore you stay within the confines that the system wants you to do. So I raised CRT in the way public, the populace can deal with it. And that's the only way for real change, is for the system to be scared and have to change. Otherwise, it won't change.
But what you all detailed as far as the management structure that you're making the analogy with is, you're saying that the adult slaves on the plantation should stand up and say something instead of the children slaves on the plantation. But that's still not the plantation.
The only thing that stopped slavery wasn't the slaves being pissed off. It was the slave masters deciding that actually the general populace didn't like this. So steps had to be changed. Yeah, it's the mass opinion that affects change in society.
There it is. There it is. Adam's. Hold on. Adam's got to the nub of it. Hold on. Hello. No, Adam's got to the nub of it. Yeah, you need there to be a disruption that stops the process having its efficiency. So at the moment, if the balance is in the case that most kids in the school just accept heliocentrism, parrot it off, and then they've learned how to listen, comprehend, and repeat, then system working fine. If too many of the kids are disrupting that process, then better just remove that from the education structure altogether. Just remove it at that stage that it's causing a disruption. In other words, if you're learning advanced heliocentrism at age 8, just plant it as a seed at age 4 and never mention it again, because it causes disruption when they're supposed to be learning how to listen and comprehend. They all start giving their worldviews that we're not really that interested in. We just need them to understand, comprehend, repeat so they can be good workers. So you just remove it. You know, if it's becoming a problem, it's not a problem because they have a different view that's contrary to the actual educated point of view. That's not a problem. The problem is the disruption. Then you need to address that problem. Not the problem of the difference in opinion, the problem of the disruption.
Let me apply that real world right now. Right now in England, obviously, we've come out of the European Union. And obviously, there's a shortage of HGV drivers to deliver goods to stores. And rather than fix the problem that's caused the shortage of drivers in the first place, that's what Boris needs to do. He's actually saying, well, we'll just give temporary visas in the short term, so that the problems that are there because the majority don't accept the problems that are there, and they've walked away from it. The problems range from working conditions to pay conditions to the way they get treated by other people, etc. It's not just about numbers. It's about the problems that are causing the low numbers, and Boris doesn't want to fix the problem. He wants to condone the problems within that nation or within that sector, and open up more people to come in from Europe, which is the very essence of the thing that he stopped when he said, "Let's leave Europe." He doesn't want to fix the problem.
That's another good example, Tony, in terms of the system didn't care about who it was employing, what it was doing, because the masses weren't disrupted. So the control system was in place. The rights of the workers, irrelevant. It didn't matter because things kept ticking along. It only mattered when so many people weren't prepared to do that job for that crapness, that the system disrupted, and the masses said to the system, "We're not happy." And then the system responds. Yeah, that's when change occurs. Often, as you see, in a fraudulent way, not to deal with it properly, in the same way as Nathan said, don't deal with the heliocentrism properly. Push it back to the fore, and then carry on. So, I think that's another good example of how and why the system will deal with stuff. But it's never dealing with it for the benefit; it's dealing with it to maintain control.
Adam's on fire today. Kudos, Adam. Well summarised.
I just want to apologise to Neil and Anthony for over-talking them. I just had to get that point out.
Oh, Brian, you missed Tommy in the first half, mate.
Thank you, Brian.
I was going to say, I wouldn't worry. Don't worry.
I know, I heard it.
Got to come a point where the kids take a stand. It's like teaching them, all right, now 2 and 2 is not 4 anymore. It is now 5. Come on, that's ridiculous, Nathan. The kids have a right, if they don't believe what they're being taught, to stand up and challenge the freaking teacher.
No, they do not.
Show me evidence
No, they don't.
of this gravity.
No, they don't. You're wrong.
This curvature.
No, they don't have that right.
What are you talking about? They don't have that right. We're humans. We all have rights.
Right. Currently, in the UK, I don't know about in the States, you have to sign a contract when you go to or enroll your kid in a school. You're contracted with them. They don't have a right to challenge what they're being educated. You're contracting with the school on the proviso that they will provide the education for your child. Not that your child has every right to challenge that. Do you have any... Hold on.
Exactly.
Hold on.
You hit it right
Hold on.
there. You said
Hello?
They're not giving them education.
Hello? Still middle of the same sentence. Hello? Do you have any idea how difficult it is to change an education point in this country? Have you got any notion of how difficult that is? You think the ground level kid that's being educated's got a right to challenge that? Anthony, just let...
I'll tell you why.
Hold on.
If it's not
Oh,
true...
God. This is so fucking hard. Anthony, can you just lay out to Neil how difficult it is to get anything in that regard changed?
Unbelievably difficult. It's outrageous. I mean, put it this way. If you don't wear your seatbelt, it takes the state seconds for them to fine you, to put you through the legal system and to get you in all sorts of trouble. But if Nathan used the word educate, and if it's their contractual obligation to educate rather than indoctrinate, the difficulty that you've got as a citizen, as a person of that contract, to prove that they are not educating you and that they are actually indoctrinating you is so difficult to do, because the enemy is the state. It's not the actual party of the contract. You're fighting the system, the belly of the beast, and that is an evil system.
Yeah, but I can refute every bit of that. And Neil, you're going to be happy with this. I know you will. There's that child, that might be your child, but that child already has a contract. And within that contract is something called free will. So you can make whatever contract you want with whatever school you want and whatever state you want. But that child already has a contract with God. And God allowed that child to have free will.
And with that, I'm going to say, if you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley premiering streams, then stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. So, a huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of you who smashed the super chat, liked, commented, shared, subscribed, and all that good stuff. Once again, stay tuned if you're watching on a premiering stream. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.
Oakley! What a lovely name!
State or the school system, that child already has a contract with God, and within that contract is something called free will. So that child has free will, and that contract with God overrules all other contracts.
And that's what.
Yeah, Brian.
Okay, nice. I'm glad you didn't drop your phone. And that's what. And that's what I exercised when I was in comprehensive school. And this was before I even knew God, before I even became a Christian.
Guys,
and
I don't mean to be a party people, but my God is better than your God because my God is, for example, Allah.
Well, that's not the subject here. The subject, we'll go to that next if you like. The subject
Your
here.
God is my God.
No, let's not. Go ahead, Tony.
Okay, well, at least let me get what I'm going to say out then. All right.
Go ahead.
On the point with Brian, prior to ever reading a Bible or any of that, because I'd never had, I had that feeling that Brian just said, that I'm free, that I could think for myself. I was the standout. There were other people like me who would just question everything. There were a few of us. It wasn't the whole class, that year. And so I'd be like, in one class, I'd be the only one raising my hand. And another class, there'd be two of us. And maybe one time, three of us. But it wasn't more than that. Because everybody else there was just, okay, shut up. We just want to get through and then get to recess. But the point is, Brian is right. I felt that I can question my teacher. But here's what I figured out, that I still retain my freedom and my right because I was forced, as Nathan says, in a comprehensive education system. If I wanted to pass, I have to regurgitate what the lesson was. The teachers would, and there was only one who said to me, but all I needed was one for my conscience to be good. Again, he said, look, just answer the question as the lesson says. I know you don't believe it. I don't even believe it. That was all I needed to keep my freedom. They never took my freedom.
I think that's what I try to avoid, is that sending my kid to school like William Wallace. He's there to repeat to get a certificate. And if the state system is to be challenged, for me, it's not the kids to do it. There are ways and responsibilities. I don't send my kids to school to critically think. That's my job. That's my contract with God.
Yeah, but what if the kids don't believe what they're doing? It's the whole thing. If the kid is not believing it, then what's the point?
Well, and
hold on. Sorry, just for Neil. Sorry, Adam. Just for Neil's benefit, the distinction is between you and your fortitude, as we used that word earlier, in this regard. Now, you in this context is the 4-year-old, the 10-year-old, the whatever-year-old in school that has their own God-given brain and can assess it. They don't have to accept it. They can challenge it. They can do all of those things. Nothing's stopping them. Now, the consequences are, as I've already detailed, if that happens, because of the structure that they're in when they're doing it. It doesn't stop them, and they've still got a God-given right to do it. I'm not going to disagree. But at a societal level, which is typically what you talk about, Neil, Sleeping Warrior's correct. You go to a level, and Adam's correct. That's down to you. Now, in this country, we have a choice in terms of the education that we offer our children. Now, if you decide that the opportunity has arisen for a comprehensive education to be offered to your child, and then you give it to them, that's your choice. The kid can't make that choice. The kid can't contract with the school. The kid can't disagree with what's being educated to them. They just have the opportunity to take the information and repeat it if they want the mark. Comprehension is all that's required.
Well, hold on, but my kid is a straight A student. I will say that. And they appreciate that. It's just confusing them because he is a straight A student.
The thing that's interesting though, Nathan, is that whilst I tend to lean with you on one hand, on the other hand, when you were saying about the contractual obligation that you sign a contract with the LEA, the local authority, to teach your children. That the word educate or teach, however you want to describe that, needs definition.
Exactly.
if they're not teaching or educating and doing something else, which I'll use the word indoctrinating instead, then they're not complying with their contract. That's the issue.
No, I agree.
Well, I think
I agree. But again, when we use the comparison in this example, we're saying, has the kid got the right to challenge it? So you're saying that a kid at 7 or 8 years old is going to raise with the teacher that he believes that a partisan political viewpoint's being taught rather than an educational point? No.
You can't challenge it on the contractual basis because of privity of contract. You can't sue or be sued upon a contract that you are not a party to. However, there's legislation that prevents it under the Education Act, isn't there? It's 406 and 407 of the Education Act 1996. It outlaws the indoctrination of children. Literally says you cannot indoctrinate children with partisan political views in any subject of the school. Indoctrinate is the word they use.
Yes,
so
I'm well aware of Section 406. However, the point remains the same. In order to get that changed, it doesn't change anything about the purpose of the structure in the first instance, which is to provide a system that gets somebody to comprehend a piece of information and parrot it back in a test environment to show that they can do that. Now, as much as I admire the work that's being done in that regard, I think if it was achieved, in other words, if for the sake of argument, an aspect of the education that's currently given to children changed for the benefit of flat Earth, let's say, in the detriment of heliocentrism as a better terminology, then all that would do would be structurally beneficial to causing less disruption in the lesson, as opposed to providing a less partisan view to the children or an alternative that gives them a bit of expansion on their thoughts, because none of those are beneficial to the structure that's being provided. So, in many ways, while I would commend that work, I sometimes see it as a bit futile. I'm just being honest.
I think what's missing here is the fact that at times Nathan's playing devil's advocate, and we have to give him that. The second thing is Adam said something great, which was it's the parents' job to teach their kids, and especially on many issues. But here he made reference to critical thinking. It was my decision and my wife's decision. Hang on, sweetie, I'm on the phone. Okay, go ahead. That's my grandchild. Okay, so it was my decision after becoming an adult, having 3 children, that I was going to send them to private school no matter what, at the tune of $600 to $800 a month as the rates changed. So I made that decision, so they wouldn't be in that same position I was in. Now, I was in there and I rebelled against it. And so now my kids have turned out great as far as we're concerned. And when they came home, even with private education, okay, what did you learn today? What's your homework? We were involved. You just got to get involved. You got to help them because you're living in the world of lies. It isn't just school, it's TV, it's commercials, it's their friends repeating something. If you're going to want your kids to come out right, get involved.
Yeah, especially if you can't. Just one more point to that. You can't. Not everyone can afford to give their kids private education. I'm one of them. Now, while I do give my kids certain private lessons, that's as much as I can afford. In other words, we do it right up to the extent that we can afford. And no more, because we haven't got any more to pay. But the point is that in a private education setting, you are taught in the way that we're suggesting it's responsibility of the parent to teach. That would be critical thought. That is taught in private schools. Very different to the way it's taught in comprehensive schools. Now, most people are unaware of that fact, and the elitism element does come in terms of, well, you're just better than them. So that aspect is well known and is known to be useful in education. It's just not given to everybody.
No, I
Critical
agree.
thought isn't taught.
Hang on, John. Let me round off my point. I was either going to get a nicer car or do private education, and I had to make a choice. So I chose the education. If I didn't have the monetary ability, then I'd be stuck with the current system, but I would still be involved as a parent, just like Adam said. All right, John, go on.
Can I have one word on that? I sit in the middle. I could have afforded to send my kids to private school. I didn't. I didn't go. And I didn't see, I think you see my views of what the state education provides them. So that syllabus was going to be taught. I weren't spending a load of money. That money's for their future. However they spend it, but there was no way I was going to do it because, like I said, my role as the parent is to give clarity to everything that they come back with from the big wide world. Yeah, to put and sit and talk to them and give them sometimes critical thinking about it, sometimes to tell them my perspective of it and to accept that until they've got their own. Yeah, but that to me is the most important. That's why I didn't spend money on it, because I didn't think it was value for money anymore, if I'm being honest. And I did all right in coming out of a comp. I was able to think critically because I was encouraged to do so by my parents.
Well, there's 2 points that I want to address. Is I don't think the states, because we have public education in the states, and the way it's set up is like a sieve, and most of the stuff that's taught is comprehensive. But there's also underlying programs, the AP classes, gifted programs that teach critical thought. So there's both in the public education in the States. I don't know how it is in Europe.
Well, I was trying to find this out the other day. I was discussing this with my brother-in-law because his daughter, my niece, is about to reach the age where they take the 11 plus here. And when I was going up to school on the train, I also went on the same train with a load of kids that went to 2 grammar schools. One was called Shottery and the other was called King Edward's. And certainly I used to talk to the girls more often for obvious reasons, but I'd be flirting with the girls and finding out what they did in their school time. And it was mildly comparable to what I was doing in the private school at the time. And still, it was subtly different to what they were doing in the comprehensive school. So it did parallel, or at least from what I could ascertain from what I was told at the time, bearing in mind this is going back probably 25 years, it seemed to me that the grammar schools, as they're called, which is something that the gifted kids go to. So you pass a test called the 11 plus, meaning in age, but that's just what the test's called. And if you pass, you go to a grammar school. And certain aspects of critical thought are taught alongside the normal syllabus. And in the private school, yes, they're teaching stuff that is involved in normal schools, but it's no way structured the same. So critical thought was much, much more prevalent in the private school than it was in the completely devoid of critical thought comprehensive school, and certain aspects of it in the, what do they call it, the grammar school. So that's how it's laid out in over here, if that makes sense.
Well, I'll tell you something funny from when I was in school, because I come from a housing estate and just a normal, in America, what they call a blue-collar background, just working class. And I was in a normal everyday school, the usual ones, state school. And every time, in every school I was in, I always ended up in primary school, which would be when I was a young kid. I was in what we used to, I don't know what the term was for, but we used to term it the special class, which means you'd be taken away from your normal classes and you brought to this other class. And you'd be there, like I was, with a load of other people from different classes, because everyone was brought at the same time for this class. So all age groups in this class. And the thing about this class was, there was 2 types of people in this class. There was the most questioning and critical thinking types, without a doubt, in this class. And there was the kids who were just not able to, the kids who had no interest in learning, and the kids who just weren't able to learn what they were teaching.
Oh, this is beautiful. This is beautiful. Carry on.
You'd be in my classroom then.
Hold on. Let him carry on. Hold on, Tommy. Let him carry on. Everyone calm down. I want him to carry on because this is beautiful. It's describing how someone with critical thought is no different to a Dumbo who doesn't get it and just causes disruption. They're both classed the same. Go ahead, Brian. Epic.
Yeah, because who was in the class was either kids who couldn't learn or kids with extreme emotional problems. They would probably they were termed it sometimes as mental problems, but it was just emotional problems. And there was kids who were critical thinkers. Now, some of the kids who had emotional problems were the kids who were critical thinkers as well, because they were coming from bad backgrounds.
Yeah.
So they were messed up from at home. But they were the most critical thinking. All the people I remember from that as they were growing up, they were the most critical thinking people. And so in that class there was either.
Can I share a story on this, please?
As Nate
It
said,
just speaks
the
so
Dumbos-
close to
Can you
home.
share it
people-
right in the middle of him talking? What do you think, Tommy?
I'm sure he's finished. Sure he's on the way to the end of his end.
Just give us a moment, Tommy. I'll be finished then.
No
So
worries.
yeah, basically, the class was half down the middle. I'll make it short. The class was half down the middle. Half of the kids were just not able to learn. They were dumb, what people would call dumbos. The other half were kids who just did what they were told to be teaching was too boring, and they weren't. There was no critical thinking. There was no mental excitement for them. So they were the two types of kids in the class. Finished.
Perfect.
Yeah, I'd just like to say, is that you finished, Joe? Just to check.
Yeah, I just wanted to make the point, which was to say that, yeah, in the same way I'm saying to, I can't remember who it was, I think it was John, yeah, you could just need to go through the process, comprehend and not cause disruption, show that they can repeat, because otherwise they become the disruptive kid because they're asking questions. And that's no better than the dumb kid that doesn't understand anything and can't keep up with the lesson. They both get bundled in the exact same category. Go ahead, Tommy.
Yeah, you get stuff doing
So
them.
I don't think that's true.
Because basically that's the same thing happened to me
not a
when
straight
my
answer.
teacher would say it's a maths thing, and I'd learn the equation and I'd do practice it on a piece of paper, and then after I'd practiced it and learned the concept, I'd start talking to my friend, and my friend would be struggling with the concept that the teacher would teach, and he'd go, "Oh, Thomas, stop being disruptive," and I'm going, "I'm not being disruptive. I've done the work." And I go, "Oh, well, how do you do this then?" And he'd like bring up another thing that he hasn't taught us, because you haven't taught us that at the moment. You only taught us this to do this bit. But if you want me to try and work that out from that bit, and I'd have a shoot in the dark, and I'd probably get pretty close to it. And because I was pretty cocky and because I'd be learning it too quickly, I then get bored. Exactly what he's describing. Now, was it disruptive? It's not like I wouldn't do my work because I was in the top classes. Could I get the good grades? Apart from maths and English, obviously. No, maths and science I was really good at, but English I was terrible at. Sorry. And that's what
John,
happened.
what were
I
you
got
gonna
picked
say?
out of the top
What were you
classes
gonna
into
say,
these
John?
behaviourment classes, in these groups of people, like he says. Exactly the same thing happened to me. And I felt that I wasn't being stimulated enough with my teachers, and I felt that the regiment of the way they were teaching was too rigid. And even when I grow up through that, it's something that I've always had in my mind, that there's a company called Innocent that do this work environment, work office, and you go into it, and it's like a playground. More or less, like when you go to work, it's quite casual. You can wear what you want. The building's got lots of ventilation. It's got loads of seating areas, loads of open areas for people to think and to stimulate their minds.
Google.
Whereas
First of all, the
schools were like
education system in the
prisons.
States is constructed for girls to excel, not boys. Let's get that one out of the way.
What?
No, that isn't
The
exactly
education
true either.
system in America, yes, it is. It's directed more for the girl, not for the boy. Yes, it is.
No, it's
That's just
because
society
the
currently.
girl's intellectual quotient, as it runs on average, seems that they are more in the middle. Boys run to the extremes usually.
Right, John. A girl can
That's
sit
why it
down with a
doesn't.
book and a paper and write all day. Try that with a boy.
Right. It's
But I can't
not
believe the
for every
teacher.
boy. I agree.
I can't believe the teacher thought Tommy was disruptive.
I definitely was disruptive as well, because once I've done my work, I got bored, and that's where it usually came from. Usually, it's not like couldn't be quiet and I couldn't learn something, because I'd love to learn. But the teachers would only teach you like one concept, and then they'd get you to practice it on a piece of paper, like with more advanced like questions. Like question 1 would be like 2 add 2, and by the time you get to question 20, it'd be like 2 minus add 2 add carry the 4 to whatever, blah blah blah. And obviously you got more as you got further, it got more difficult. Whereas I'd do like the first couple of pages, learning the concept that it was, and then I just kind of got bored of it, because I thought like, oh, all right, I know what I'm doing now. Now what? And then you go, oh no, you complete the sheet, and then I'd sit there, go for the sheet, complete it, and I'd be like, then now what? So then I start talking, and you go, oh, you haven't done your work. Of course I've done it. Well, you've told me to complete it, I've completed it. Now what? It's the same thing over and over. Just different questions. It's the same thing, but it's like you've done it. It's like 30 questions, but everyone else is struggling with it. Everyone else is taking like half an hour or an hour to get through it, but it took like 5-10 minutes.
Yeah, that's
Do
what
you
they're
know what I
supposed
mean?
to do. It's just for Tommy. I know you're all really keen. So a friend of mine used to work at the Land Rover production line, and what he explained was that you're given a certain amount of time to do a certain task. Now, you don't want to do it too quickly, because they'll shorten your station length, because you're getting it done in a shorter period of time, so that increases your workload. So you need to ponder your way through the workload at the amount of time that you've got to do it. Now, obviously, Tommy, you didn't understand that at the time. Everyone else who you thought was struggling, no, they were just coping with the workload at the rate they were designed to cope with it at. You coped with it too quickly. That's bad, because it meant that you started jabbering. Bad. If you were on a production line, you wouldn't just be pondering your way through the task at the right rate, you'd be rattling your way through your task, getting it done and talking to the guy next to you who's rattling his way through it at the right pace, which makes you a bad worker. So this is your fault, your misapprehensions about what you should have been comprehending and the pace that you should have been comprehending it at. Your fault.
Well, I think there's a problem with all of this and the way that we're describing it as a disruption, because it's not like my son went in there and started, telling all the kids the earth was flat and calling the teacher out in mid-lesson. I've taught my child more respect than that. The problem is coming in him addressing her one-on-one after the lesson. That's what...
Oh, that puts a very different context on it. So that's much more personable. That's between him and the teacher.
Yeah, and I got called in for a parent-teacher conference about it because she couldn't answer those questions.
Oh, well, that makes it very different. So he's taken up a personal issue about the lesson after the fact, so it didn't disrupt the lesson. Wow, very respectful of your child. Kudos to him. But after the fact, when it's between him and the teacher's taken it back out and expanded it out into a teaching context. When it's an after-the-fact aside point that he was asking her about personally. So she's just taken it higher up to the teacher and you've had to come in. Well, that's all on the teacher. What a bitch or bastard, whatever it was, male or female.
Right. He's getting straight A's. That's what I was trying to say, through all this, is that the entire point was taken in the wrong direction. He knows what he's supposed to do while he's there. He's there to answer the questions correctly.
I'd be speaking to the school and saying, could you stop this teacher trying to learn stuff from my child after school, please?
Yeah, exactly. Flip the burden. Exactly, flip the burden completely. But it does change the context of where the conversation went, very much so, if we'd have known that at the start. But I'm glad where the conversation drifted anyway, because when I said there's other examples, the other examples were certainly not the same as that. They were more akin to kids in the middle of the lesson when they're being asked or having a heliocentric aspect detailed to them, questioning it right there and then in the middle of the class when they should be listening and comprehending, writing down.
That's disrespectful. That's just disrespectful.
Indeed. But if that becomes an overall problem, that's where you end up with the system addressing it, not because it's a problem that the workforce might think differently about the nature of the earth. That's not a problem. The fact that there's a disruption going on in the classroom while they're supposed to be learning about anything they're learning about, and the learning about it is irrelevant also. It's just listening, comprehending, repeating, and understanding that they need to be able to do. So that makes the context very, very different. You're right.
2 points on this, if I may. That's great clarity, John, that you shared there. Now, in my case, I didn't have an agenda. I wasn't pushing something. I was just asking questions based on critical thinking and my curiosity. And that's when the teacher said to me, I don't even believe it, but I have to teach it. So that allowed me to retain my independence, my freedom, go through the whole school system, realizing that all the teachers probably fit in one way or another in the same category. So all I had to do was endure and get out. I didn't have to accept the BS, and I didn't. Second.
But you did that in a private setting with your teacher. They didn't say that in front of the entire class, did they?
No. I raised my hand in class time, asked a very earnest question. We went around it a few times, and because he couldn't overcome the critical thinking, the back and forth, he says, look, I don't even believe it. I just have to teach it. That was the freedom that I needed to keep my freedom.
Okay,
because I wasn't going to sit there and have people brainwash me. But once I realized they were brainwashed and they just had to do this, I was okay with it.
Okay, your second point, because someone else will interrupt and talk over it otherwise if I don't cue it.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
I'm ready to say something.
Second point is my father, best worker I've ever seen, came to this country with $100. And he told me that when he had this one job, that he was just killing it. I mean, getting more done. The workers came to him and said, you need to slow down. You're making all of us look bad. And he said, I'm just working. You guys are lazy. I'm not built like you. So he just kept doing it. Second part of that story, obviously they didn't like that, but the management liked it and made the other people embarrassed because this one guy was doing a lot more in one day than they were. That's to comment on what you were saying earlier, Nathan. Second part of that story is later, my dad became independently, with his work and his knowledge and skill, mechanic, everything. And so there was this water softener company, and they would pay $300 for any person who installed a water treatment system in the homes. And so it's $300 per job. So my dad would do anywhere between 4, and I think his record was 7 in one day, but normally between 5 and so forth, 5 or 6. And the management with these people would always use my dad. See this guy? He does 7 in one day is his record. He on average does 5 or 6. You guys barely get through with 2. You have to go back the second day to finish. What is wrong with you? Why can't you learn from this guy that you can install these things quicker? It's more money in your pocket, $300 per job. So this is where your story rang a bell with me. Go on, Nathan. You were going to say something.
Well,
Yeah,
I think Tommy's got something to say. Go ahead,
sorry.
Tommy.
Yeah, I was going to say that it's really funny that when you said they got there to get the parents into the kid who started asking questions to the teacher. Obviously, what they want to do there is they want to investigate where did this kid get this knowledge from, and obviously by getting the parents in, they could probably see that he comes from the father, and then they can then adjust more of how they're going to treat that individual in the school once they've assessed the parents also, because it's what schools do. So they try to even then, if they know these kids are getting homeschooled and they're coming in with homeschool into the school, they still want to get in touch with the person that's teaching them at home as well, and then they want to start getting involved and making their life complicated. Because say if it's not going well with the school, then they can say, "Oh, this is false teaching to the children and stuff like that. This is I don't know, get the social service involved or something maybe." How far could it go? Could you reckon from the educational system say that they found out that he was being homeschooled to teach that the Earth was different dimensions to what they're teaching in the school, and it was causing conflict within the educational system? I think that's
back to the original point, Tommy, which is to say that when it comes to a religious belief, in this case heliocentrism being taught, if there's a contradictory point that doesn't sit in line with that religion being highlighted, it's the same as saying, I don't know what to say to the little Muslim kid. I just don't know what to do with him. That's the equivalent. Now, the fact that the entirety of the Western world think they're on a sphere and therefore beg the question with this religious belief and accept it carte blanche as it's taught to their kids doesn't mean that there's going to be a certain minority of kids that go, yeah, I just don't accept that religious belief for these reasons. And when that happens, as I say, and I keep saying throughout this show, that for the control structure, as me playing devil's advocate, I will highlight it because 10th saw the need to earlier, although I see it as being obvious when I do this, it isn't beneficial to them for the worldview of the minority to actually be part of the education structure, because that part of the education structure is tied down in heliocentrism. That's the religion, and it's difficult to work your way around it. They'll just fudge it so that they don't have to have that conflict of interest when they're teaching the kids in the future.
Well, I think it's important in the way that you address people with it too. Like my son approached her after the lesson, because it's not like she doesn't like him. She just don't know what to do with him. I don't think it's a matter of getting social services involved. She loves him to death, but she just don't know what to do with him. So I think it's important in the way you address.
I find that very difficult to understand.
Really need to do
because
anything, though, does she?
Your son approached the teacher after class in the private setting. He didn't do it the way I did it in the class, which still turned out okay for me. But if he had done it, then her statement would make sense. What she's saying is, I don't know what to do with him when he comes to me on a personal level, but never disrupts me in class. What the heck does that mean?
Her problem. Do you want to repeat your statement, Rams?
Yeah, what does she need to be doing anyway? What is she worried about?
Nothing. She didn't need to do anything. She escalated it to a higher position, and then the school got involved and dragged the parents in. Well, it was nothing to do with anything at the stage that the teacher was pulled to one side after the fact and just asked a question on a personal note.
Yeah.
And
yeah, so,
and I was making the point that when they drag the
nothing come
parents
of
in,
it.
that what they're doing there is they're trying to assess the parents to try and see where this information's come from, and then they can assess them. So it's just more.
Was the teacher concerned that this was something that needed to be dealt with?
Yes.
Is that why she?
Yeah.
Yes.
On a
took it
personal level,
further?
though. And she escalated it to the school because she, literally, that's the words he or she is using. I don't know what to do with this. Therefore, I'll escalate it.
Well, I was able to
You're more educated than they
alleviate-
are. They're only educated to repeat what they've been taught and not to question it. So when you do question it, they're literally not prepared for it. Neither is somebody that's been through education. I mean, how many educated people do you talk in here? We're talking with physics teachers, for crying out loud. They don't understand that you can't have gas pressure vacuum container. We've got fucking people putting pipes up the fucking building, demonstrating a container, and then saying, "Oh, this is a demonstration of gas pressure vacuum container." It's just we're talking with absolute batshit crazy people.
Indeed. Go ahead, just round out your point, and then I think Adam's got something to present. John.
Yeah, I was just saying, though, the fact that he was doing it properly in the setting he was in, and respectfully, is what threw her off. And I don't think it was out of anger or some malicious intent she brought us in. She was just, I think, more amazed than angry. And that was her exasperation, is that she couldn't answer the questions, and she wanted me to talk to him about it, and that's what it was.
John, you got to
Maybe it was malicious in any way.
Maybe the real problem.
Nathan's show.
Sorry.
No, don't send Leah. Okay, go ahead, Brian.
Just
and then
before
Adam's
Adam
waiting
goes,
to present.
just before Adam, yeah, very quickly. Maybe the real problem was she can't understand how he can be a straight A student, but also believe the Earth to be flat, as she would see it as a belief. He believes the Earth is flat, but how can he be a straight A student and believe that? You understand? She doesn't understand. He can be he's a straight A student, but but has not, like, she's equating straight A with someone who must believe in a globe, maybe. Do you know what I mean? That's her personal.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
She's equating intelligence with straight A's, and then she's equating flat Earth with stupidity, and it's causing a malfunction in her brain. That's all that happened.
Right.
Yeah.
That's because of a misconception of flat Earth. Really, that's her fault, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not
completely,
really,
Tommy. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what we're saying. This is her issue, and nothing more. Yeah, he's got straight A's, so he can comprehend and parrot back and get a high mark in comprehension and parroting back what you've told him. But after the fact, when he's got the A, he then, having got the mark and all the ticks, goes up and says, "I actually don't believe any of this for this, that, and the other reason. What would you have to say about that?" And she goes, "What? But you managed to write it all down on the paper, so you got a tick next to it." Yeah, it's amazing how intelligent people can hold one position and detail it and yet not believe it. Isn't that incredible? Not really, it just shows intelligence. Something beyond the teacher's ability to comprehend. Yeah, he can literally detail a position and correctly identify all the aspects of that position without having to believe it. Amazing that, isn't it? Every one of us on this show can do that. Arwin, just use him as an example, can be better than any baller who ever comes here in terms of arguing for heliocentrism. Is he a baller? No. Can he detail it to the point where he would get an exemplary mark in a heliocentric exam? Oh, absolutely. He doesn't believe a word of it, though, and neither do we when we play devil's advocate and position their argument for them. Well, he can do it, to the point where he can get a straight A for all of the questions that are being asked about that subject. But then he just wants to inquire with the teacher, given that I don't believe this, that, and the other for this, that, and the other reasons. Yeah, I can comprehend that that's what I need to do to get the mark. But what have you got to say about it? And the teacher goes, what do I do?
I know Adam's waiting, but I got a remark to that. I think it's worse than that. I think Brian's point is excellent, but I think the teacher is having a struggle within herself, because she's saying, wait a minute, he's a straight A student, and then comes to me afterwards, says he doesn't believe it, and gives me arguments I can't answer, so I'm going to call in the parents. So think about that situation. The teacher is on shaky grounds now, because the kid knows more than the teacher.
Yeah, damn right. That's the teacher's problem, though, again, isn't it? All of this is all down to the teacher. This is your problem, teacher. But there we go. Adam, gravity, it's only a theory. Not a theory.
Yeah, it's not specifically that title. This page is, I think, a month or more ago. Eli brought this page up on a search thing, and it was just talking a description, taught us facts in schools. So I did a little look into this NCSE, and it's just in relation to what we're talking about today. Look, things take time to change, but it appears these are an NGO, but there's people out here, and the topics they're talking about specifically, I think, are how climate change is taught and how evolution is taught. But teachers and parents kind of demonstrating and putting together alternative curriculums that present critical thinking and opposite opinion to stuff. So I think, whilst we've talked about a lot of stuff, the kids, that there is stuff going off out there that is seeds for change, particularly in America. There's a lot more freedom out there, but just wanted to share that because it's quite a cool website. Goes into what they're doing, supporting teachers, etc., and kind of allowing thought outside of that mainstream curriculum and promoting it. So
very good. What's the website called?
It's ncse.ngo, and that's the National Centre for Science Education.
Very good. Thank you, Adam.
I would like to say something about the state of the education system. I think it's not perfect, but it is a system that's able to adapt. And I think it's, for what we have, it's awesome. It's just you have to approach things correctly in their minds. And, a child's position is not to question adults. That's just not.
I totally disagree.
Or their teachers.
I stand against most things that the education system stands for. I think it's a terrible system. So I couldn't disagree more. I know I've spent I've spent most of this show playing the position that that's how it should be, and it's the right way to be, and it's preparing you in these ways and that ways. Yeah, the reality is, like Brian, I'm stood with Brian in this conversation. I think everything about the education system is absolutely vile. And the cogs that I'm getting shown by various people who are showing me their attempts to weasel their way into change within that system is nigh on impossible. I just think it's a dinosaur. It's a horrible, horrible system. I hate to disagree with you in such vehement terms, John, but that's just how I feel.
Well, I would like to rebut that, because it does change. It has changed, and it continues to change. So it can't be a dinosaur. It's just the people who are controlling that system.
John, let me ask you, when you say it's not a dinosaur, just hang on a sec, Neil.
Go ahead,
when you say it's not a dinosaur, depending on how you define dinosaur, and I don't mean to be pedantic, but what would you call it if they're teaching physics from like 112 years ago, before World War One? What would you describe that if it's not a dinosaur?
Well, that's the system that, like I said, but it's changing.
Come on.
Not though, is it?
Who are the bodies?
Stop, everyone stop. I just want to hear John and Sleep. Everyone else, hold on. I just want to hear John and Sleeping Warrior, right? So far, the question on the table is, how can you say it's not dinosaur-like by analogy if you've got 106-year-old rhetoric being taught? And your answer so far is, well, it's because it's changing. No, you've just had an example of how it isn't.
Albert Einstein is being taught as well, which is the exact opposite of Newtonian gravity, because it's not a force.
He's not in the national curriculum in the UK, so I would argue that he's not being taught, because in the national curriculum it clearly states at the front that teachers need to have a good reason to venture from their legal obligation to teach what's in this document. And with Einstein not being in the document, most teachers don't want to go outside of that document because they've got pensions and kids to pay for and bills.
Right, because that's the way the system's set up. But the system does change. It has changed in the past, and it will change in the future.
So answering my question directly.
It's not a dinosaur.
Answering my question directly, what would you describe teaching kids that physics of 100 plus years old? If you wouldn't describe that as a dinosaur, what would you describe that as?
Incorrect.
But it's not. That's fact. Hold on. Let's just get that cleared up. Right. Newtonian is taught in schools right up into A level in this country, which is where you guys... I don't know how that works in terms of A levels, in terms of it slipping into the American system, if that's just part of your what would be the equivalent of GCSE. But up to 18 here in the UK, sometimes a little bit older, you're taught that mass attracts mass, 106 year out of date, in name only, Newtonian gravity. Now, it's then conceded to that same person the second they get to university, if they're being taught physics, that is not what gravity is. But it's still taught and has been for 106 years in schools. That's archaic.
Well, see, in the States, we have multiple systems running simultaneously within the system. So you have your advanced classes,
John, I beg of you, just answer the question I asked. If you wouldn't describe that as a dinosaur, what would be the descriptive word that you would use to describe what Nathan's just outlined?
It would be wrong.
Yeah.
They're wrong.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean it's a dinosaur.
It is. It's out of date.
I think, John...
Hold on. You can't just say no. You can't just hand wave off the fact that they're treating 106 year out of date information as fact when it's being taught to school kids. That's a fact in both countries.
Well, okay. Think of other subjects that are being taught.
No.
As fact.
Let's not. Stop it.
It
You can't do this. You can tell he's an ex-baller when things like this happen. No, let's not talk about other subjects. Let's stick to the one we're talking about. We're specifically talking about very much on topic gravity and how 106 year out of date gravity is taught in schools to both American and English kids, and probably the rest of the Western world for that matter. So how can you square that circle? Not other subjects, just that one that Anthony's given you as an example.
I'll tell you, they have a belief structure that has imbued in them that their belief is fact.
That's wrong.
That's why they're teaching it that way.
Stop. Incorrect. So, Anthony's probably going to tail off this pretty quickly as I start to detail it. That's wrong. They are taught before they get their qualification to teach in the first instance that what they are about to teach at that level is incorrect. When they get
Correct.
Feel free, Anthony, you carry on.
So at undergrad physics, that's where they get expressly taught, like Nathan said, degree. That's where they get taught that gravity is not as per Newton, it's as per Einstein in the current position. Yet they go into the classroom after getting their teaching qualification and then knowingly teach that Newton is the current position, and their justification for it is because it's my job to teach it, knowing that it's wrong. Is that acceptable in the name of education, or is that something else? Like I would say, is it indoctrination as the opposite?
Don't lead him. Just let him answer.
Well, hold on. Let me go to Nathan's point about pushing the buttons, because in a system you need worker bees, right?
I was just going to say,
Do you need to know the properties of weight? Do you need to know the properties of weight to utilize it?
That's not relevant to Anthony's point. Anthony's point is in terms of the standards that are laid down contractually in terms of what you will get, and that is education, as opposed to partisan political viewpoints.
Can I add a little bit of clarity?
No.
Okay.
Just let Anthony round out this point. This is his baby. I want this to come to a conclusion at Anthony's behest.
Let him answer. Nathan, ask him the question again.
It's the case that when you contract with the school, you are partaking in an understanding that they will be educated as opposed to indoctrinated with partisan political viewpoints. Now, given that it is fact, 106 years out of date, and taught to the teachers as being incorrect at university level, it sits into the latter category, a partisan political viewpoint rather than an educational point, which is the expected standard when you go to that school. Regardless of our justification with it being a comprehensive education or one that's taught with the trivium, it doesn't matter in this regard. Education as opposed to partisan political viewpoint. That's what you're expecting to get when you contract with the school. And they're not getting it. That's the facts of the matter.
Is this a political opinion of what the shape of the earth is?
Not party political, but political derives from the word policy, and policy is anything to do with the public. The actions of government. Look it up. Look up the word political. Yes, everyone instantly thinks party political, but it derives from the word policy and anything to do with the public.
In this
I'd like
case,
to know why they wouldn't teach me.
this is important. Hold on.
The Egyptians thinking it was flat.
Hold on. This is important. That might not have sunk in, and Anthony only said it once. The distinction between party political and policy, which is just, quote, political. Now, people automatically assume that when you say political, you mean party political, relating to the Conservative Party. No, that is not what it means. It's related to policy. And in this case, education policy. This is political.
Okay, I just wanted to say that I would like them to have taught us both sides of the coin, with all the Egyptians thinking it was flat and all the other things in the past, because you're saying that it's only they're only teaching stuff that's not true, and then telling you when you get to certain higher education, that education was false, but they need people to kind of get the entry level understanding of them Newton's laws that they were teaching.
No, that's wrong. No, that's incorrect, Tommy, because it's not an entry-level understanding of Einstein to understand Newton. They are contradictory to one another. So you can't argue that one gives the foundation to the other, because it doesn't. They're not even in the same geometry. So that can't be argued either, I'm afraid, Tommy. Sorry.
Definitely said it was taught. And I didn't say that. Definitely said it was taught, knowing it was wrong, just to get people kind of get through that. And then when you get to higher education, that's why I used it as an entry-level sort of example, because basically people don't know that it's a lie that's been taught by the Newton's laws until they get to their higher education. So it's used as like a sandbag.
Yes, that's correct.
Is it policy to treat gravity as a force? Because if you listen to George Muser, it is.
It is policy to teach gravity that teach children gravity is a force. Yeah. However, legislation governs
not to teach it.
No. Legislation governs what is, quote, taught to children, and it says you must not teach partisan political viewpoints in any subject matter in the school. But if they're teaching something that is partisan and political does mean relating to the government or public affairs of a country, it's the first definition when you type it in. If they're teaching something that's partisan, one-sided, and political of the state, then that is by law, it's illegal. So it's not just a breach of contract; it's actually legislatively prohibited because it's one-sided. Can you imagine the stick of dynamite that you would give to a child if you told him, "Hey, your teacher's told you that gravity is a force. Go in and tell him in front of his colleagues and his workmates and the classmates that gravity is not a force, and Einstein says so, and he's the current position in physics." What's that going to do to that teacher? It's going to make him look like an idiot. But that is the current position.
That's disrespectful as all get out to do that to your teacher, though.
It's not disrespectful.
Hold on, Sleeping Warrior. Hold on. Just let John make his point. Go ahead, John.
To do that in front of everyone, to call someone out that you're supposed to be giving respect to because you are the student, to do that to your teacher is disrespectful. Now, if you did it in a private situation, that's one thing. But to call them out in front of everybody seems wrong.
As a liar, hold on. As a liar,
I would argue that by saying that.
Hold on,
Sleeping Warrior. What you're saying
the
is
words that you used was partisan political opinions, right? You're not supposed to teach that.
Right.
Well, what is the alternative to gravity?
In this instance, Einsteinian or quantum mechanics would be the alternative.
Right, and George Muser said that it's not a force, but you can treat it or think of it as a force. So they're just teaching people to think of it as a force. And what's wrong with that?
No, that's not what they're teaching. No, that's not what they're teaching.
I want to respond to your earlier point, which was you said it would be disrespectful to call out a teacher in the classroom in front of his colleagues or friends or whatever. I would say that is protecting the illegality of promoting partisan political views in the teaching of physics, because you're not calling it out. So it depends on how left-wing, right-wing you want to be. On the left-hand side, you can say, well, it's disrespectful. On the right-hand side, say, well, you condone any illegality there.
You'd have to prove intent of the teacher, right?
I got it.
No,
Perfect. Just let me answer that. Exactly. So because they have been taught that it is not a force, and Einsteinian rules currently in that paradigm of heliocentrism, you can argue that they are lying. They do know differently. And I suspect that's intentional. It puts an onus onto a teacher that's unreasonable. It puts them into an awkward position with their students, should this ever arise, because it's not disrespectful for somebody to call somebody who knows that what they are saying is incorrect a liar. And Anthony, I hope you'll agree, it is by definition a lie if they've been taught the contrary position in order to gain the teaching degree to teach them the original position they were told was incorrect. Therefore, at the point that the student, if the student had happened to, of their own volition, research Einstein, just for the sake of argument, and then in the middle of the class they raise their hand and they say, excuse me, you've just said gravity's not a force. They hold up a textbook and flick to the page that the same teacher's been taught from and say, you know, because you need to. So extending on Anthony's example of the disrespectful child in your example, John, standing up in the middle of the class and saying, gravity's not a force, and further to that, I've looked into your education and you were taught that it wasn't a force. You're a liar. Would that be disrespectful?
To do it in the middle of their lesson?
I think we're subjugating the actual point when it comes to the...
Answer his question.
Sorry.
Answer his question.
Me?
No, John, Nathan's question was, is that disrespectful to stand up in front of the class, in front of or everybody else and say, you were taught that gravity is not a force, why are you teaching it to us? Is that disrespectful, or is it disrespectful, yes or no?
Well, yeah, because you're doing it in front of the class. You're undermining any authority that they have at that point.
Okay, I accept that.
I think what it is with him is more of a shame thing, isn't it? When you get public to everyone else.
Tommy,
it's
don't
a shame
latch
thing.
onto the latch onto the periphery point. Go ahead, Sleeping Warrior.
So my second question is, I accept what you say. It is disrespectful, but do you accept that when I criticise that, because if he knows that he's teaching falsehoods to children because he was taught it at degree level, but he teaches it anyway, once he's aware that the law prohibits that and he still does it, are you not condoning the illegal act by not allowing the child to question it, given that the child knows that he's lying because he was taught otherwise?
Do you understand the question?
It's not upon your child to fight your battles. You should be dealing with that.
No.
Can I give an example?
Hold on. Everyone just let John get to the full end of his answer, and then John know that the child's got a God-given right to disagree. Go ahead, John.
Right. He has a God-given right to disagree, but it's upon the parents to bring those issues forward.
But they're not in the classroom, so they don't know about the issue.
They're not involved in their children's education, and that's their fault.
No, they don't know about the issue because they were taught the same as the kids were taught.
That's
what they don't know about
John,
the
because
issue.
the reality is we all got taught the same shit at 16, 15, 14, whatever age. And I was 36 when I realised that gravity was not a force.
Hold on, let's not segue. Hold on. John has already got an example in his own child of what the correct scenario, just to draw a line under this periphery point, the actual status of whether or not it's partisan, political, or educational in terms of its value, right? The periphery point being whether or not it's respectful. Well, okay, fine, we'll concede that to stand up on the desk and call the person a liar whilst throwing a spitball at them is definitely disrespectful. However, strolling after the class to the teacher and asking them as a side note, I understand that you were taught that this isn't actually a force, is that correct? Would be much more respectful when there's no classmates around to suddenly have the teacher's overall authority in every respect to everything they teach ever undermined by an 8-year-old. Yes, so there is an answer to the question in terms of the respect. This is periphery though. Who cares? The main point is whether or not the aspect of the teaching is relevant when they know it's not true. I feel they've been positioned intentionally that way, so that they've got a more difficult, go on, whoever that was from G+, go on.
Well, yeah, I would say you're right about that. I do. But I mean, I feel sorry for them more than I despise them for it. They've been put into that situation to push a button, haven't they?
See, I can agree with that, John, but let me ask you about conspiracy cats. When he's in the topic, he knows it's not only contentious, but he knows that he was not taught that gravity is a force at degree. Do you still feel sorry for that man when he knows that it's not true, or do you empathize?
He entered the public arena with adults of free minds, but he's not. if he's see, that's a tricky position, you know. Like, is he going into his classroom with his YouTube channel and like the kids, you know, doing it with the kids?
Yeah, well, he did
Like,
have a channel called GCSE and A-level science, right? And in that, he was teaching the syllabus. So by teaching the syllabus, he's teaching them a lie.
Yeah, okay, I would buy that, and you know that, but
the question
Go on, John,
is Sleeping Warrior is asking a moral question, and he's specifically referencing conspiracy cats in this regard. So saying from a moral standpoint, regardless of the teacher that doesn't know it and is suddenly facing an 8-year-old, which is the scenario that John literally had, right? In the case of conspiracy cats, it's a different scenario. Now, while at an unconscious level they've been taught something contrary to what they're teaching in the case of Newton versus Einstein, you could argue that, you know, that's at a subconscious level that they hadn't even contemplated and might be seriously apologetic upon realising. In the case of conspiracy cats, he is very much aware, because it's been highlighted to him on multiple occasions, that what he is teaching to the kids is very different to what he was taught, in contradiction to what he's teaching to the kids. Now, being aware of it at a very conscious level and having it pointed out to you, at a moral level, Anthony's basically leading you to say, what a bastard, he should realise that he is actually at this point just lying to kids.
well, yeah, I agree. Once you're made aware of the information and it's pointed out to you, he is intentionally lying. But do I think that all teachers are doing that? No. That would be my position.
No, neither.
But
I would
Conspiracy
agree.
Cats is obviously doing it.
No, I would totally agree. In the same way as Quantum Eraser hadn't contemplated gas pressure without a container until he contemplated it and then was like, oh my God, how embarrassing, I hadn't even thought of it. Well, even if you're taught that gravity's not a force, it's the bending of pseudo-Riemannian force space-time as a consequence of the uneven distribution of mass, and it's not actually a force at all, quote, end quote, Brian Cox, or gravity not a force, George Musa. Once you've got all of those things under your belt and then you go into the teaching setting, you're worried about what time the break is and whether or not you've got all the marking done. You're not necessarily contemplating whether or not Newton is actually in line with the rhetoric you were taught at uni, because you're not teaching your uni rhetoric. You're teaching something different, so you don't contemplate it. But some of them, in this case, conspiracy cats, does know, is and has contemplated it, but continues to persist in a lie being taught to children. Very different.
It goes one step further, though, and I've got it on screen. I know John can't see it. Oh, no, John can see it. John's screen sharing with me, right? It says on the front of the national curriculum, it says, details, these programs of study are issued by law. You must follow them unless there is a good reason not to. Well, that's clearly placing the teacher in the firing line. If they deviate from it, why would they take the risk if they can get behind the defense of, well, I'm just teaching what they've told me to teach because it tells me that I can't deviate from it unless there's a good reason to? They're not going to challenge. Why would they put their head above the parapet?
Well, isn't that why George Muser said we can, we do, we must think of Newtonian gravity as a force? It doesn't really mean it is one, but we don't have to work at the really is level.
That's called lying. What George Muser said there is, he's trying to condone the lie. That's what he's literally doing.
And he has condoned it.
They have a
final statement does condone it. We don't have to work at the really is level. So you're teaching kids at the not really is level then, Mr. Musa? Outrageous.
So then is that education or is that indoctrination?
Precisely.
But who do you hold responsible for it?
That's the crux of it, John. That's the crux of it. That's why it's a tricky wicket, a sticky wicket, if you will, for the teacher themselves, because they're suddenly in a position where they're responsible, and as Anthony's got it on screen right now, they aren't going to want to put their head above the parapet. Why would they? It's going to get shot off. They're just going to teach what they've been told to teach, regardless of its contradiction of their teachings when they were at uni. But that puts them in the position where, well, actually, you had a good reason to question it. You knew it was wrong.
Why do they deserve respect?
I can't.
Right.
Well, I'm just pointing out that their priests. Sorry, hold on one second. I'm just pointing out that their priests even believe the same way in that contradictory position.
Well,
So
because the priest double spoke, that makes it cool. Because the priest said I could think of the chicken as a donkey. I could.
Come on,
right.
Brian.
That's what I'm saying. Who does it fall upon? Do we dig Einstein up and burn him for it?
No, the teacher. This is the problem. It falls on the teacher, which is a very unreasonable position to be put in, if you ask me.
It does fall on the teacher, because under section 406 it says the local authority, the governing body, and the headmaster, head teacher shall forbid the promotion of partisan political views in the teaching of any subject in the school. Well, who does the teaching? The teacher, innit?
Teacher. The buck stops with them. That's the problem, John. So it falls on their shoulders, and Anthony's made conspiracy cats the shoulders that it's going to fall on. And fair enough. It is the case that he is aware. He is very much conscious of it. He was taught about it. He does know he's now lying. So unfortunately, you put yourself in the public arena, head above the parapet, as Anthony described it. Well, unfortunately for you, conspiracy cats, that's you right now, very publicly too, I might add. So you've got no reasonable comeback in that regard. You stuck your head above the parapet, and now you're having it cut off very slowly by Anthony. I wouldn't want to be you. It would cause me a lot of lost sleep, but there we go. I sleep like a baby. It's wonderful.
Right, let's listen to Brian. Come on, Brian. You've been waiting patiently.
I had a few things to say, but it don't matter now. I'll just stick with this point. There was a guy I came across in, I think, 2019, maybe 2018, and I was trying to learn about general relativity. I was really kind of trying to find out more about it. And this guy is an English lad, and he is, I think, an astrophysicist or something of that ilk anyway. And he was having an interview with this girl, and he was saying that he goes around to primary schools, which would be, I don't know what the term for primary schools is in the US, but when they're young kids, he goes around to these schools trying to teach the young kids early, that gravity is not a force, that Einstein's theory of general relativity doesn't state gravity as a force, and that what they teach is not correct. And he said he was going around into primary schools trying to do this. He said because what happens is exactly what you're describing, is in the school system over there, people are taught it's a force until they get to, I don't know, as you said, at the degree level or something, then they're told, when you go to university, well, it's not really a force, it's actually some other description. So he's actually out there trying to fight this gravity as a force stuff being taught in schools. Now, I can't find, and I even bookmarked it or whatever, saved it at the time, and I can't find any mention of him anywhere. So I don't know who the guy is, but there was a whole article or thing about him where he was doing this. This is 2 or 3 years ago. So, they know that they're teaching the kids the wrong description of something that doesn't exist. But it's still the wrong description. It's not the current description. And you have people like this guy who is an astrophysicist who would tell conspiracy cats or anyone else, in public, that no, that's not correct.
With that line of thinking, evolution. There's no proof for evolution. They're teaching that.
That's a debate for a different day, because with that, I'm going to say another huge, enormous thank you to both Discord and G+ panels for making today's after show possible. Of course, a massive thank you to all of you in either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley premiering streams for hopefully smashing the super chat, liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, hitting the PayPal link, and all that good stuff. Also, below this video, you can get £50 for swapping your UK electricity supplier to Octopus Energy, and this is of particular note if you drive an electric vehicle. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.
a lovely day!